We start deep inside a dark dungeon. Our main character thinks he will never escape and expects to die there. People call him incompetent and look down on him. But then, he discovers his real power. Suddenly, a monster attacks him. He decides to fight back using his ability. His right eye changes, the pupil becomes a gear. A clock-like magic circle appears on his fist. He swings his hand and the magic circle blasts the monster away. This is the story of the so-called useless clock user, who was kicked out of the Craftsman Guild but finds his true strength deep inside the dungeon. Some time ago in the Royal Capital's Craftsman's Guild, Cyclo finished fixing a clock he was asked to repair. From the outside, the clock looked fine, but inside he saw that some gears were bent, which made the whole clock shift. He discovered this using his skill, Clock Appraisal. Then he used his clock storage skill to find parts to replace the broken ones. Since the clock was pneumatic, he planned to tell the owner to move it to a safer place later because it could break easily. He carefully put the parts together in silence. His smile showed that he liked his work. A few minutes later, a guildmate told him that the guildmaster wanted to talk to him. But then the guildmate saw Cyclo shaking at the table and asked if he was okay. Cyclo was excited because he finally touched a pneumatic clock in real life, something he had only read about in books. He couldn't stop looking at how the clock worked and all its gears. The guildmate thought Cyclo had finished fixing the clock. Cyclo said he was just doing the final check to make sure it worked. Since the clock was fixed, Cyclo used his skill called Clock Stop on it. This stopped the clock from moving to protect it from damage caused by vibrations and to keep it as it was. This rare clock was left behind by a nobleman. The nobleman's usual repairman couldn't fix it, so he gave it to the guild. The guildmate said that no one else but Cyclo could handle the clock. He called Cyclo amazing when it came to clocks. Cyclo smiled a little and said this was the only thing he was really good at. His skill, called the Clock User, was Cyclo's special ability. He went to the guildmaster and asked what he wanted to talk about. Without hesitation, the old man said that Cyclo was fired. Cyclo was shocked and asked what he had done wrong. The guildmaster said it was clear they did not need someone who was not good enough. Cyclo said he had helped the guild well and told how he had fixed an old clock from the palace. The guildmaster said that the job should be given to a more talented craftsman. Then a nerd appeared and said he was the talented one with the skill of craftsmanship. The guildmaster said his son could fix anything, unlike Cyclo, who could only fix clocks. The guildmaster said he had enough and told Cyclo to leave the guild. Cyclo asked him to think again, but the guildmaster simply kicked him out of the building. Cyclo walked around town thinking about what to do. He ended up at the highest place in town and remembered how he had always loved making things since he was a child. Everyone was happy with the magical tools he made. The first person he made happy was his mother. She often had trouble because the laundry got wet, so Cyclo made a device that could tell the weather. Everyone called 6-year-old Cyclo a genius. Even a merchant couple showed interest in him. They wanted him to marry their daughter and help run their business in the future. Everything went well until one day 2 years ago. Cyclo's sister Alice was pulling him somewhere quickly. Cyclo asked her to slow down, but she didn't listen. A girl who was following them laughed and wondered if their future daughter would be like Alice. Cyclo asked what she meant. The girl reminded them that they were engaged, but Cyclo said that was only something their parents decided. The girl asked if he didn't like her. Cyclo couldn't refuse her. Alice got jealous and kept pulling her brother. The girl did the same. The three then arrived at the church where their skills would be chosen. In the kingdom of Heinberg, when citizens turned 16 and became adults, they always took part in this ceremony. Teenagers lined up while adults like parents and professionals watched. The girl was surprised to see many people there. Alice said that the most important people from guilds all over the country were attending. Cycle said anyone could be noticed and chosen right away because of that. When someone prayed in front of the crystal, a character would appear. The words shown by the crystal became the granted skill. Then it was the girl's turn. Cyclo wished Maria good luck. As Maria knelt and prayed, the crystal shone brighter than it did for anyone else. Even the priest was surprised by the characters that appeared. Maria had received the saint ability. Everyone was happy to see a saint appear. While people from the church gathered around Maria, Alice asked if the saint was the most special skill. Cyclo said it was a rare profession that had not shown up for decades. He thought Maria was amazing. There were two types of skills, general skills and profession skills. General skills showed up because of a person's natural traits, while profession skills appeared because of many traits combined. Profession skills were rare, and the law said people had to work in jobs that matched their skills. In this country, skills were more than just talents. They were a person's fate. After seeing how Maria became a saint, Cyclo hoped to get something just as good. Alice asked if they should go next. Cyclo asked for some time to build up his courage. Alice decided to go first. She told him not to think she was going first to be selfish. Cyclo told her to go ahead and patted her shoulder. Alice felt tears in her eyes. Thinking about her brother and Maria together made her emotional. She did not want to lose to a saint. Alice knelt and prayed in front of the crystal. Then the crystal shone brightly, just like it did for Maria a little while ago. The priest was surprised when a sage appeared. Alice was shocked too. Everyone else couldn't believe what was happening. They hoped they would get a rare skill as well. One person asked if being a sage was really that special. Someone answered that sage was the highest skill in both the magician and alchemist classes. It was Cyclo's turn next. The girls had big hopes for him. Even Cyclo thought he might get a powerful skill that could match the girls' abilities. The place suddenly became even brighter than it did during the girls' turns. Everyone was silent, amazed at what they saw. Cyclo somehow found himself in a strange dimension filled with floating gears. A powerful being asked why he wanted a special power. Cyclo thought about the people around him and said he wanted to make his family and everyone else happy. At that moment, someone's shout brought Cyclo back to reality. He wondered if he had just been daydreaming. But more importantly, he asked what his skill was. The priest then announced that he was a clock user. Cyclo didn't understand what that meant, so the priest said it was someone who worked with clocks. Everyone who heard it thought it sounded boring, especially since the crystal had shone so brightly earlier, making them expect a powerful or exciting skill. The priest opened a book and read that a clock user was the person in charge of a giant clock tower. The tower was built based on a song said to be sung by the god who created the world. What was certain was that Cyclo's role as a clock user was the first of its kind and very rare. Still, it was only considered a vocational skill, not something useful in battle. The priest then asked the next person to step forward. Cyclo wasn't happy with the explanation. Being a clock user gave him a very low rank. Right away, his engagement to Maria was cancelled. Maria told him that the church didn't approve of their engagement and her father didn't want her to marry someone like Cyclo. She kept saying sorry, but Cyclo understood it wasn't her fault. He told her he wouldn't give up. He promised to become the best clock user in the world, someone respected by everyone. He said he would return for her once he reached that goal. Maria said she would wait for him. Meanwhile, Alice was scouted by the Adventurers Guild and quickly started doing well. Their mother told her to come back home if things ever became too hard. Cyclo wished her the best and promised to support her when life got tough. Alice felt touched for a moment, but then said she didn't need help from her useless brother. Cyclo felt hurt by her words, but he reminded himself not to fall behind the girls. He later joined the Craftsman's Guild. Even though his boss didn't like him, the law required them to hire him. Still, they warned him not to be lazy. Some people praised the work he did. A nobleman even said it was a shame Cyclo couldn't become a great magic toolmaker and instead became a clock user. As a clock user, his skills were all related to clocks. He had abilities like stopping time, checking clocks, making clocks, storing clocks, and finding clocks. Each skill did exactly what its name said, but those were his limits. Maria and Alice, who had always been with him, were now gone. He was left behind, unable to move forward. Even if he hadn't become a clock user, from that day until now, he had always believed one thing. However, he was completely on his own. Cyclo walked home in the rain feeling sad. On the way, he overheard some women talking about a recent serial rapist. He hoped the police would do something about it. When they noticed Cyclo, they wondered if he was okay. Cyclo found himself thinking about what kind of person could enjoy doing such terrible things, but in the end, he didn't really care. As he kept walking, he passed a strange man wearing a hood. The man looked suspicious, but Cyclo didn't stop. When he finally got home, a woman greeted him warmly. She told him to hurry and change his clothes and wash up. Cyclo replied that he could take care of it himself. The woman was Miranda, their neighbor. She had been looking after Cyclo since he was young. After his mother fell in love and left, Miranda stepped in to take care of him like a mother would. Miranda handed him a cup of tea with gear patterns on it. She said she found the cup at the tool shop. She asked if he had gotten into a fight with someone from the guild. Cyclo told her that it wasn't the case and said he was fine. Miranda looked at him kindly and said there were things only he could do. Cyclo couldn't hold back his tears. He set his cup down and said the herbal tea tasted salty. Miranda laughed. Thanks to Miranda, Cyclo felt a little better. He knew he needed to figure out how to get back to work. He thought about asking a regular customer to recommend him, but most wouldn't even let him in without a letter from the guild. Cyclo stopped walking when he heard two people talking about their next target. He had heard about these people before. They were being talked about a lot in town. He quickly used his clock detection skill and found out there were two people nearby. They were talking about a woman who ran a pharmacy shop in the middle of a neighborhood. Cyclo immediately knew who they were talking about. There was only one woman who fit that description. That was Miranda. His anger rose quickly when he realized she was their next target. He wanted to punch them, but he knew he had to stay calm. One of the men seemed worried that their plan might cause too much attention, but the other man said it would be fine, as he was a policeman. Cyclo couldn't believe what he heard. A policeman, someone who was supposed to protect people, was planning a crime. Shocked and upset, Cyclo kicked a nearby can by accident. The noise caught the men's attention. The policeman walked toward him and with a fake smile asked if something was wrong. Cyclo got nervous and tried to talk about what he overheard. The policeman said he was just questioning someone, but also said it was strange for someone to be walking around here at this time. Cyclo felt a chill run through his body. He suddenly turned and ran away. The other man asked if they should have stopped him, but the policeman remembered that Cyclo often visited the pharmacy. He said Cyclo might be useful later. At the police station, Cyclo begged them to believe him. The officers thought he was just confused, but Cyclo insisted he really heard the suspect say he was a policeman. The police decided to take note of it. They then asked Cyclo what his job was. Cyclo, feeling uncomfortable, admitted he was unemployed and had just been fired from the Craftsman's Guild. The officers were surprised that someone so young didn't have a job. Cyclo felt things were turning against him. Now he looked suspicious. In that world, people with professional skills were expected to have jobs, unless something was wrong with their character. The police decided to stay alert, and Cyclo asked them to do so. On his way home, Cyclo realized that people didn't trust someone without a job. He decided to take matters into his own hands. He planned to stop the suspect himself. He would wait for them, catch them, and make a scene so others would see what was happening. It was the only plan he had. While hiding, he noticed the suspects coming. He recognized them by the sound of their special clock. It was the same person he had seen in the alleys before. When the man, dressed as a policeman, tried to open a door, Cyclo ran toward him and tackled him. The man was caught off guard and fell to the ground. Cyclo shouted for help and nearby people heard him. Cyclo felt hopeful. It seemed like things would finally go right, but the man smiled. Then he flipped Cyclo over and pinned him down instead. Just then, Miranda arrived and asked what was happening. The man told her to call the other officers because he had caught a serial criminal. Cyclo was shocked. Miranda was even more shocked to hear Cyclo was the one being accused. Cyclo tried to explain, but the man kept him pinned down and said it had been worth watching the area. Cyclo couldn't speak for himself. He felt like everything was falling apart. He reached out to Miranda, but his hand couldn't reach her. He had always wanted to make people happy. He had always believed he could do the right thing. Everyone looked at him with disgust. Even Maria looked disappointed. In the end, Cyclo was sentenced to exile. He was sent to the frontier as a criminal slave. But this was only the beginning of his story. This moment was just one part of the larger machine that made up the strange and unfair world he lived in. One day he would be known as the hero who changed everything. Back when the trial was happening, Cyclo kept shouting that he hadn't done anything wrong. He said there was no proof that he was the one who did it. The judge started to wonder if that was true. Then the police officer from earlier, Bujin, came out to speak. Cyclo was confused about why Bujin was there. He pointed at Bujin and said he was the real culprit. But Bujin told the court that Cyclo had paid local troublemakers to clear the area. He also said Cyclo had hurt several women and that the police had already finished their investigation. Cyclo couldn't believe they were blaming him. The people watching were also shocked. They didn't think Cyclo could do something so awful. Cyclo then noticed something strange. Even though it was just a simple trial, there were a lot of people watching. Most of them seemed connected to the women who had been hurt. At that moment, Cyclo realized he was in serious trouble if they believed he had committed such a terrible crime. Then Bujin brought in some witnesses. To everyone's surprise, Maria showed up, and she was with the hero. People wondered why the protectors of the capital came to such a small place. Cyclo was even more shocked when he saw Maria standing on the other side. She looked at him and started to feel sick. The hero told her it was okay and encouraged her to tell the truth, promising he would stay by her side. This moment touched the crowd. Seeing how close the hero and Maria were, many believed they would get married soon. Maria revealed that Cyclo used to be her fiancé. She had been sending him letters and money, thinking he might be struggling with his job as a clock user. Cyclo, confused, asked what she meant. Bujin explained that the church had records of the money transfers. Cyclo said he never received any money. The people watching couldn't believe he kept denying it. Then Bujin called someone over saying it was Cyclo's accomplice. But it turned out the man was actually working with Bujin. The man claimed Cyclo gave them the money and told them to leave the area, saying they didn't know what he might do next. Miranda was shocked by what she heard. Cyclo said he didn't know the man and had never done anything like that. Maria then spoke. She said she had hoped Cyclo would admit the truth and learn from his mistakes. Instead, he called her and the church liars. She called him the lowest kind of person. Cyclo felt crushed. He could only remember the promise they once made. He tried to get close to her, but the hero pointed his sword at him and told him to stay back. He called Cyclo a cruel man who didn't care about Maria's kindness. Cyclo shouted, asking why no one believed him. He begged Miranda to speak up for him, saying he wasn't the kind of person who would do something so wrong, but Miranda only looked away, clearly upset. At that moment, Cyclo felt everything was lost. He was just a clock user standing against a saint, a hero, and a policeman. With people like them around, no one would listen to him. In the end, he was sent away to live in exile at the edge of the land. Afterward, Bujin took Cyclo to the prison cells and thanked him for taking the blame. But Cyclo angrily promised to take Bujin down with him someday. His eyes changed and his pupils looked like turning gears. Bujin told him to go ahead and insult him one more time. Once Cyclo was locked up, Bujin went to another room. There, the hero was surrounded by a group of young girls. Bujin told him that the criminal's transfer was done. When the girls saw both the hero, Raven of the Crowheart family, and Officer Bujin of the Bojack family, they were amazed. They believed that a person's strength could be seen in their appearance, and the two men looked impressive. Later in the same room, Raven said he didn't expect things to go so well. He admitted that Cyclo had caused him trouble too. Bujin asked how Raven got the saint to speak up. Raven replied that he only told her the truth. Apparently, the saint didn't know someone from the church had been stealing the money she sent and burning her letters. Still, Raven thanked Bujin for handling Cyclo. He said all he had left to do now was comfort Maria, who was heartbroken. Bujin joked that Raven was a wicked noble, but Raven pointed out that Bujin, a viscount, wasn't any better. Bujin said the world was boring unless they kept chasing after women. Raven agreed with a laugh. The two trusted each other and saw themselves as partners in crime and winners. But they didn't realize that someone was secretly listening to their conversation. Soon after, Cyclo was taken by carriage to the northern part of the kingdom of Heinberg. This was where the worst dungeon called the Deep Hole was located. No one had ever reached the bottom of this dungeon. It was also a place where adventurers fought dangerous monsters that came out of it. Because of the dungeon, the area grew with new buildings and businesses to support the adventurers. This place marked the edge of the land known as Norththoria. Later, at the Adventurers Guild, everyone watched as Cyclo was dragged inside. A man saw him and assumed Cyclo was the new porter sent from the capital. The man introduced himself as Guan Koyaj, the leader of the Adventurers Guild. He said he had heard stories about Cyclo from the Great Sage. Cyclo thought things might get better since he was related to Alice. But then, Guan said Alice had told people that her brother was hopeless and couldn't do anything right. Cyclo said it wasn't true, but even the guild receptionist confirmed that Alice had said those things. Cyclo felt like the world around him was fading. He couldn't believe his little sister, whom he loved so much, would say that about him. Guan told him he wouldn't go easy on someone like him. He said Cyclo would work like a slave until he died. Cyclo's hope began to disappear. People had always called him useless because of his lame-sounding skill. Even though he tried hard as a porter, no one ever appreciated his work. He had been beaten many times. He ate food made for animals. In time, all his hope was gone. Cyclo became someone who only said yes when spoken to. Even that annoyed the adventurers, and they would beat him up. He stopped caring. He felt like an old piece of cloth, worn out and thrown away. Then one of the adventurers suddenly had an idea. The adventurers dragged Cyclo to a hole that people believed was the entrance to the Deep Hole's abyss. Cyclo stayed silent the whole time. The adventurers were upset with his boring reaction. They said that even though they were A-ranked adventurers, they still made the effort to bring him there. They couldn't believe how useless Cyclo seemed. Cyclo, on the other hand, thought falling into the hole would be an easy way to die. But then, Cyclo saw something strange. He imagined Bujin asking him to take the blame and die in his place. This vision shocked Cyclo and made him snap out of his thoughts. He started to struggle because he realized he didn't want to die like this. His sudden movement made one of the adventurers angry and they pushed him. Cyclo fell into the hole, screaming as he dropped into the darkness until his voice faded away. Later, Cyclo woke up and looked around. He was surprised to be alive. It felt like a miracle. Even though he had thought life didn't matter now that he had almost died, he realized he still wanted to live. When he looked up, he saw thick spider webs above him. They had slowed down his fall. The fact that he was light and unconscious also helped him survive. Since he was still alive, Cyclo decided to figure out what to do next. He made a clock and saw that more than half a day had passed since he fell. He checked what he had with him: 1 bottle of water, a metal match, and a knife. His next worry was the monsters. He knew he was in a part of the deep hole that no one had explored before, so he needed to move carefully. At that moment, something hit the top of Cyclo's head, making him jump in shock. He looked up to see what it was. Above him was a giant creature. It had the body of a tall human, but its head looked like a monster. The strange creature was eating another monster. Cyclo couldn't believe what he was seeing. He stayed quiet and watched as the monster finished its meal. Then the monster slowly turned toward him. Its face had no eyes, but it growled in his direction. Cyclo froze. He had just seen this creature eat something way bigger than him. Before he could run, one of the monster's tentacles moved. It had an eyeball at the end, and it spotted him. Cyclo took off, running as fast as he could. He knew he was in serious danger. He found a hole and jumped inside. The monster's attack barely missed him. Cyclo kept crawling deeper into the hole while the monster tried to reach in after him. He believed he would be safe if he kept moving. After a while, he saw a light up ahead, but when he got there, it wasn't a way out. It was a dead end, a huge drop that could lead to his death. No matter where he went, danger was waiting. 5 days have passed since Cyclo entered the hole. He noticed the monster still waiting outside as if it was saving him for later. Cyclo was weak and tired. He looked like a mummy. He couldn't remember the last time he ate a real meal. He wished he could eat his mother's meat pie again. At that moment, Cyclo started seeing things. He saw Maria and Alice calling out to him, telling him to join them. They said he didn't need to go through more pain. Feeling happy to see them, Cyclo stood up to go with them, but suddenly their voices changed. They said someone like him, who was useless, should just die. Cyclo screamed as he came back to his senses. He had almost jumped off while seeing those visions. Then he saw a lizard nearby. He said sorry to it as he picked it up. Without thinking, he ate it. He groaned in disgust as he chewed. When he saw the lizard's cut-off tail, he realized he was just like it. Because he couldn't protect himself, others had thrown him away when he became a problem. He got angry as he remembered everything. How he got his skill, lost his job, got blamed for something he didn't do, and how Maria left him. He couldn't believe it and he cursed out loud. He punched the wall again and again until his fists bled. He swore he would take revenge on everyone who had looked down on him. He wouldn't forgive them. He promised himself he would live no matter what. He shouted that he wouldn't die in a place like this. His anger caused a pillar of light to shoot up from the deep hole. The guards at the border saw it and rushed to report it to the Lord. Even Guan didn't know what was going on. Cyclo didn't understand it either. A glowing magic circle appeared around him shaped like a clock. His eyes started to look like turning gears. He stood there wondering what had just happened to him. Cyclo felt confused and wondered if the strange feeling was because of the lizard he had eaten. But that didn't make sense. His hunger was gone, and even his wounds had healed. He realized the feeling in his stomach was his body's internal clock. Using his powers, he turned his body back to a time when he was still full and healthy. Suddenly, images of himself flashed in his mind. He used Time Stop, and just like he thought, his energy and strength came rushing back. He found this helpful. He just needed to keep fixing his body and survive by drinking only water. Since the monster was still outside waiting near the exit, he chose to stay inside and think of a way to escape. Before this, Cyclo could only use his powers on mechanical clocks. But now, it seemed the saying was true. The more you use a skill, the better you get. His clock user abilities had grown. Now, he could control hourglasses, water clocks, and sundials, anything with the word clock, or anything that worked like a clock. He decided to start training. First, he made a water clock and a sand timer. By studying and analyzing them, he understood how they worked. Then, he removed the containers and used his magic to control just the water and sand. Next, he created a sundial and made a small sunlight orb using his life energy. It was only as big as his fist. To make a bigger one, he knew he had to improve his physical strength too. 1 month passed by with just physical training. Cyclo concentrated as he created the 3 types of clocks: sundial, water clock, and sand timer. He tried to heighten his awareness as he concentrated. He then used Time Stop to freeze the clocks in their perfect states. Cyclo was glad that he did it. He managed to finish the first step. Next thing to note was his skills application in battle. For now, he wrote down everything he had learned from studying the 3 types of clocks he could make. He was still worried that his clock perception wasn't very accurate because things like walls got in the way, and he knew he needed something better than just using his eyes. When he saw the sundial's sunlight orb shine on a water bottle, he got an idea. He could use the shadows instead. Discovering new things made Cyclo feel like a curious kid again, but this time he was also driven by the need to take revenge on those who had hurt him. To do that, he had to keep improving his skills. 2 months had passed since Cyclo started researching his power. He had made a long list of what he could do now, and he felt proud of what he had achieved. The only thing left was to defeat the monster and escape. Cyclo then used his clock sense and clock generation skills at the same time. Through practice, he had made the sundial's search and the water clock's water perception much stronger. Now he could sense the whole level around him. By combining clock sense and the water clock, he could find anything living that had liquid flowing inside, like blood in animals. He also learned how to create a small sunlight orb from the sundial using clock generation. This could help him sense things too, by using the shadows it made. Even in faraway places, Cyclo could now understand where everything was, almost like he was holding the whole area in his hands. As Cyclo kept watching, he thought the monster at the entrance was sharpening its claws, but in reality it was forcing its way through. Cyclo couldn't believe the creature was able to squeeze through such a small opening. It let out a loud roar like it hadn't eaten in days. Cyclo had been training for this moment for months, but he was still surprised. The monster had also been slowly breaking the rocks around the entrance. His legs were shaking, so he punched them to stop the fear. He made up his mind. He had to fight. He tried to use his clock user power, but the monster attacked first. Tentacles flew at him. Cyclo barely dodged them. If he hadn't, he would have been finished. He ran to create space between them and thought about what to do. He realized the monster's eye was the problem. Cyclo used clock generation but only called out the sand from his sand timer. He shaped it into a sharp slash and sent it flying at the monster. The sand cut off its tentacles, and the monster screamed in pain. Cyclo felt like he had done well, but then the monster started shaking and going wild. It smashed everything around it. Cyclo had to keep running to avoid the attacks. As the monster continued thrashing, the entrance collapsed behind it, sealing them both inside. The whole place turned dark. Cyclo thought this might be the end. But then he noticed something. The monster had stopped attacking. It had lost track of him in the darkness. Cyclo used clock sense, and he was able to find the monster by sensing the fluids in its body. Using this chance, he activated clock generation again and formed a blade. He slashed at the monster and cut it in half. What he used was the guiding hand of a sundial, shaped into a blade that sliced straight through his enemy. Cyclo was out of breath. He created a small light from the sundial to see better. The monster was no longer moving. He used clock perception to check the monster's body fluids. Since they weren't flowing anymore, he knew it was dead. Cyclo started to cry. He couldn't believe it. He had defeated a monster. At that moment, he felt something warm flow through his body. He realized this was what adventurers called a level up. By killing monsters, people could grow stronger by taking in their power. Now, Cyclo knew it. If he kept defeating monsters, he could keep getting stronger. A small smile appeared on his face. His journey for revenge had finally begun. The gears that once stopped were turning again. Cyclo smiled widely and activated his clock user powers. It was time to rise. The monster saw Cyclo. He decided to defeat them. Cyclo used his clock generation skill, and sharp blades made of water sliced through the monsters. This was another way he used the water clock, which could create fast-moving water blades. One monster tried to attack from behind, but Cyclo dodged it. He thought maybe leveling up helped him see their attacks more clearly. The monsters then used their tentacles to strike from a distance. Cyclo used his skill again, this time turning the water clock's container into a shield. He also made a clock's hand and used it like a sword. The clock generation skill didn't just make clocks, it could also create parts of clocks in any shape he wanted. If Cyclo knew the material, he could make almost anything, even the best metals. His sword was made of orichalcum, and he used it to cut through the monsters. He had clock sense active and noticed smaller monsters nearby. Using his skill, he formed sundials on the monsters' bodies, slicing them in half. Cyclo felt magic power flow into him as he leveled up again. Then something huge showed up. It was twice the size of the other monsters. Cyclo realized this was the boss monster. The boss attacked, but Cyclo was fast enough to dodge. He used clock generation to create sand and water, firing them as sharp blades. The boss blocked the attack using its tentacles, forming a net-like shield. Cyclo saw that this monster was smarter than the others. He made another clock hand to use as a sword, but the monster surprised him. Tentacles came out from the ground behind Cyclo and trapped him in a ball-shaped net. Just in time, Cyclo made a shield. He said he couldn't hold on much longer and asked for help. The monster growled, thinking it had won, but Cyclo smirked. He had only been pretending. He created 3 full clocks at once, breaking out of the tentacles. The boss monster screamed as its tentacles were cut and burned. Cyclo said his perception was perfect. He could sense everything the monster did because of the fluids in its body. Then he showed the monster his most powerful clock. Somehow, the boss monster's body exploded from the inside. It seemed Cyclo had taken control of its body clock using clock generation. The monster let out its dying and last roar. Cyclo finally calmed down a bit and started moving forward. The monsters were now scared and tried to escape. However, since the tables had turned, he asked the monsters how they feel that they are now the preys. He activated the magic power he could, not letting the monsters escape. After some time, Cyclo's clock sense confirmed that there were no more monsters left in the dungeon layer. He opened his clock storage and gathered all the dropped items and monster bodies before getting ready to leave. In the past, the clock storage could only hold clocks, but now it could store almost anything, and there was no limit to how much it could hold. Cyclo finally took a break. He drank some water from his water clock. He also had cubes he called energy cubes. These cubes helped him recover his strength. Each cube was made from a small amount of life energy stored in the clock storage. Even though each cube used just a little energy, it could restore his stamina 100 times over. Once the clock storage confirmed that everything had been collected, Cyclo decided it was time to move on. But before leaving, he noticed some wilted flowers. He was surprised to see flowers in a place like the Abyss. He touched one and used his skill, clock operation. The flower slowly came back to life. Cyclo had only turned back time a little, but he wished the flower would keep hanging on, just like he was trying to do. To him, it felt like the first beautiful thing he had seen since being banished from the royal capital. Cyclo kept moving deeper into the dungeon. A glowing sunlight orb lit the way as he walked through the dark tunnels. Eventually he found stairs going upward. He realized that he just had to keep climbing, and soon he could begin his plan for revenge. So he continued moving upward, defeating every monster he met along the way. After each battle he would take short rests, then go forward again. Along the way, he even learned how to shoot fireballs by using the heat from his sundial's sunlight orb. It didn't take long before he reached a floor shaped like a round arena, surrounded by flames. Cyclo used his clock sense and confirmed that no living creatures were on that floor. But then he heard a cold, eerie voice. It sounded surprised to see a human coming from below. Cyclo was shocked because his detection hadn't picked up anything. He quickly created a shield and a sword from his clocks. The voice laughed and told him not to rush. Then it introduced itself as the guardian of the Labyrinth of Judgment's middle layer. From the dark flames a face appeared. The figure called itself the Elder Wraith. It laughed and used magic to reveal its full body. Cyclo could feel right away. This enemy was nothing like the ones he had fought before. When Cyclo heard the Elder Wraith speak, he realized that the deep hole was actually called the Labyrinth of Judgment. He also couldn't believe he had made it to the middle layers. Magic circles appeared around him, and the Elder Wraith said this would be the end for Cyclo now that they had met. The monster shot snake-shaped flames at Cyclo and demanded his life. Cyclo quickly used his water clock to create a shield, but the heat was too strong. The shield wasn't enough, and the heat made it hard for him to concentrate. The Elder Wraith kept attacking, telling Cyclo to burn. But to the monster's surprise, Cyclo managed to block the attacks just in time. Cyclo then used the water from his water clocks to form ice walls. At that moment, Cyclo figured out that the enemy was a spirit type. Since the Wraith had no blood, Cyclo's clock sense didn't detect it. More than that, Cyclo was angry because the Elder Wraith looked down on him. Cyclo created a sunlight orb using his sundial, and a beam of light shot out and hit the monster. The Elder Wraith groaned in pain as the spot exploded. Cyclo was happy that it worked. The Elder Wraith was shocked that a human could use magic that could hurt him. Cyclo told him to shut up and disappear, then made more sunlight orbs. The monster couldn't believe what he was seeing. He couldn't avoid the light beams and got hit again. As he faded away, the Elder Wraith said he couldn't believe he had lost. When he vanished, a cloak of shadows dropped to the ground. Cyclo looked at it and wondered if he had really won. Then he laughed a little and said that the Elder Monster wasn't so tough after all. As Cyclo tried to collect the monster's body, the Elder Wraith smiled from the shadows and began swirling around him. The Wraith had been waiting for the right moment to catch Cyclo off guard. Cyclo had forgotten that Wraiths were known for tricking people and taking over their bodies after death. This Wraith was even more dangerous because he was stronger than usual. The Elder Wraith praised Cyclo for lasting this long. But now he said it was time to curse Cyclo to death and use his body as a new vessel. The Wraith then stabbed Cyclo in the heart with his claws. Cyclo screamed in pain. He felt both the stabbing wound and the curse slowly spreading through his body. As the Elder Wraith grinned, Cyclo panicked, unsure of what to do. But Cyclo didn't wait any longer. He created a ball of sunlight in front of him, catching the Wraith by surprise. The Wraith asked if Cyclo planned to burn both of them. Cyclo confirmed that. He wanted to see who would last longer. He challenged the Wraith to a battle of endurance. The Elder Wraith thought Cyclo was crazy. Still, he watched as Cyclo struggled through the curse and the heat. Cyclo was reaching his limit. The Wraith only needed to wait a little longer. Then the Elder Wraith slipped behind Cyclo. Cyclo lost control and screamed in agony. The Wraith knew he had won. He took over Cyclo's body. Cyclo's hair turned white and his arms dropped to his sides. Now in Cyclo's body, the Elder Wraith laughed. With his new form, he planned to hunt humans once again. But before the Elder Wraith could take a step forward, he felt something was wrong. Cyclo's spirit was still awake. He couldn't let a monster like that eat more people. He forced himself to take out the energy cubes and threw them into his mouth. He didn't want his own body to hurt anyone. The Elder Wraith was shocked that Cyclo was still fighting and wouldn't let him take over his body. Then Cyclo's body healed right away, and the Elder Wraith was pushed out of him. The Elder Wraith couldn't believe it. When he saw the cubes, he realized Cyclo could create life energy. Cyclo stared at the monster and used his skills again. He promised himself that he would escape the dungeon and prove the world wrong for turning its back on him. The Elder Wraith called his goal a foolish dream, then used his final spell. Both of them fired their magic at the same time, but Cyclo's power was stronger. A large ball of sunlight hit the Elder Wraith and burned him into ashes. As the monster faded away, it cursed Cyclo one last time before turning into a magic crystal. Cyclo, who had been tense the whole time, finally took a deep breath. He felt thankful that the energy cube saved him just in time. He remembered that the Elder Wraith said they were only in the middle layer. That meant even stronger monsters were waiting below. Cyclo also realized that his clock user skill wasn't all-powerful. If he used it the wrong way, he could still lose. For now he wanted to forget about everything and slapped himself hard. That was enough for him to think things through. At that moment, he noticed something strange when he looked at a broken piece of glass. He created a shield using a mirror. That's when he realized his hair had turned white. He wondered if it was because of the curse. He hoped he could fix it, but since it didn't hurt him, he decided to ignore it. After that, Cyclo decided to leave. He walked past many adventurers and camps. His main goal was to reach the exit at the top of a long staircase. When he finally got there, he began to cry while smiling. He shouted with joy because he had made it back to the surface world. People outside saw him and wondered what was wrong. They thought he had finally gone crazy inside the dungeon. But what they didn't know was that Owen had just become the first human to clear the middle layer of the worst dungeon all by himself. Meanwhile, back in the capital, without Cyclo, things were starting to fall apart. The Craftsman's Guild was losing business. Miranda was chained and finally turned into a plaything, and Maria was being taken advantage of by the Twisted Hero. At the same time, Alice had just finished hunting a dangerous monster. Someone asked if she was going to send the reward to her brother again. Alice said yes. She explained that her brother couldn't take care of himself, so she had to help him. Big changes were coming, not just for Alice and the others, but for Cyclo too. The scene moved to the old clock Cyclo had been working on before he lost his job and was exiled. An old woman had believed Cyclo was the only one who could fix it. She looked like a queen. She then gave a command. She told her servants to search for the clock user, Cyclo Owen, no matter what it took them. Cyclo finally came back to town and pulled out his exploration permit from his clock storage. When he thought about it, he might have been the first person to reach the middle layers. A guard asked for his permit. Cyclo happily showed it. But the guard gave him a disgusted look. Cyclo didn't understand why until the guard called him a criminal slave and rudely told him to go inside. As Cyclo walked through the streets, he tried asking people how to find the Adventurers Guild. But people thought he looked dirty. When they saw his collar, they wondered if he had escaped from somewhere. Cyclo had forgotten about the collar and tried to explain, but no one wanted him near. A child even threw a rock at him from a window. Without looking, Cyclo caught it with his bare hands. Everyone around him was shocked. That moment reminded Cyclo that no matter how strong he was still seen as a criminal slave. Cyclo decided to stop asking for help and tried to remember the way himself. While walking through an alley, he saw a place where light was shining. When he peeked inside, he found a young girl chained up. He was shocked to see a child in such a place. The girl noticed him, and Cyclo quickly apologized for staring. He told her he was lost and asked if she knew the way to the Adventurers Guild. The girl stared at him, and Cyclo guessed she was scared of him because of the collar. But then, she slowly raised her weak arms and pointed in a direction. In a quiet voice, she gave him the answer. He thought she meant the stairs, and she nodded. Cyclo smiled and thanked her. The girl seemed surprised, but then he left her behind. Cyclo thought she reminded him of the white flower he once saw in the deep hole. Because of her, he felt ready to move forward again. He then pushed the guild's door open hard, surprising everyone inside. But someone was even more shocked. They recognized him. It was the same group who had pushed Cyclo into the abyss. Cyclo asked to see the guildmaster and said he had returned from the depths of hell. From that moment on, he chose to change his fate. At the Craftsman Guild in the royal capital, the bald guildmaster angrily threw some papers on the floor. He shouted, wondering why so many contracts were suddenly being cancelled. His son tried to calm him down, but the guildmaster blamed him instead. He was upset that his son had failed to fix Lady Olivia's valuable clock. It had broken again after only 3 days. The guildmaster said his son was even worse than Cyclo, someone he already thought was useless. His son argued that he wasn't that bad. He said he had found a useless part that Cyclo had added and removed it. He blamed Cyclo's poor repair work for breaking the clock in the first place. Suddenly, someone burst into the office. A group of other craftsmen followed, all staring angrily. One of them shouted that they had had enough. They said they were tired of being treated poorly and paid so little, like they were beginners. They also complained that jobs were being assigned poorly. New workers who didn't know much were leading while experienced ones were pushed aside. They said they couldn't work like that anymore. The guildmaster yelled at them to be quiet. He couldn't believe they were calling the new leaders newbies. He said those people had general skills and many certificates, unlike the craftsmen, who could only do one thing. He told them they should at least be thankful they were getting paid on their days off. The room went quiet, but the tension was still there. Then, the bald craftsman leading them stepped forward. He had reached his limit and punched the guildmaster. The guildmaster's son just hid in the corner and watched. The craftsman said they were done with the guild. They planned to leave and find work on their own. As they walked out, they said firing Cyclo had been a mistake. They didn't believe he was a criminal. They thought he had been falsely accused and knew that Cyclo only cared about clocks. The guildmaster got up and his son asked if he was okay. He told his son to shut up and stand. Then he looked at the pile of cancelled contracts. He lost his temper again, yelling and throwing a fit. Even then, he still wanted to blame Cyclo for the broken clock, which started this mess, and make him apologize. Meanwhile, Bujin went to the neighborhood to visit Miranda. He brought her a smile and some flowers. She said sorry for the trouble, but he told her it was okay because it was his job as a policeman to help people. Miranda still couldn't believe that Cyclo was the serial rapist. She used to think he was a good person and hoped he would change. Bujin told her that Cyclo had been sent to a faraway town to work as a servant and get help, thanks to his family's connections. But he didn't tell her the truth that Cyclo might be going through something worse than death as a criminal slave. Miranda thanked Bujin for what he did. He smiled and reminded her about the proposal he had made before. But behind that smile, he was hiding something dark. After that, Miranda rode in a carriage to visit Bujin's land. He had suggested the trip to help her relax, and Miranda thought it was kind of him to arrange the carriage and even a coachman to go with her. But then the carriage suddenly stopped. A man with a wide grin stood in front of her, holding a knife. He called out to someone behind him. When Miranda turned to look, she saw it was the coachman. Before she could react, the man covered her mouth. He quickly said he was only doing his job. Miranda had no idea what was going on. She started to panic and hoped Bujin would come to save her. At that moment, she heard a familiar voice. It was Bujin thanking the coachman and giving him money. Miranda was shocked. She looked at Bujin trying to ask for help, but Bujin only gave her an evil smile. That's when Miranda understood. Bujin had tricked her. She also started to wonder if Cyclo's case had been a lie all along. Cyclo's identity was finally confirmed because of his collar. He said sorry for disappointing them by returning. The guildmaster Guan asked again if Cyclo really came back from the deep hole. Cyclo said yes and then pointed to the adventurers who had pushed him down into the abyss. The adventurers quickly tried to defend themselves. Guan remembered a report that said Cyclo had gone crazy after seeing a monster and had fallen off the cliff on his own. But Cyclo said that wasn't true at all. He explained how the others had treated him badly. He said they teased him about being pushed off, and in the end, they actually did it. Guan said that if what Cyclo said was true, then the others would be held responsible. He also added that giving a false report was another serious offense. The adventurers started to panic. They didn't think they would get caught. Cyclo then joked that they should have picked a better place to push someone. Still, he thanked them. Because of what happened, he survived and became stronger. To him, it was a win. He even told them they should be thanking him. This made the adventurers angry, and they all attacked him at once. Everyone thought Cyclo would lose, but to Cyclo, the adventurers were too slow. He blocked their attacks with his bare hands and even threw them off. He said this was attempted murder, another crime added to their list. They tried to attack again, but suddenly they got trapped inside a glass container. Cyclo had made an hourglass, and the adventurers were stuck at the bottom part. They couldn't break it. Cyclo explained that the sand would run out in 10 minutes. Until then, he wanted them to confess everything. Guan then said the questioning was over, and they needed to focus on the main point again. Cyclo guessed it was about how he escaped the deep hole. Guan said he was right. After that, Guan finally understood everything and thanked Cyclo for telling him the whole story. It really sounded like Cyclo had been through a lot. Cyclo said that he had. Guan wanted to believe him, but he asked if Cyclo had any proof that he actually reached the lower levels. In response, Cyclo calmly opened his clock storage. Suddenly, the bodies of strange monsters started falling out. Everyone was shocked as they had never seen creatures like those before. They also wondered where Cyclo had pulled them from. Cyclo opened more storage and said he had even more. Guan quickly told him to stop. The first ones were already more than enough as proof. The dismantlers then started doing their work. Cyclo just hoped that the parts from these monsters would be valuable. At that moment, the receptionist asked if Cyclo didn't like the herbal tea since he hadn't touched it. Cyclo apologized and said he had a lot on his mind. The tea had reminded him of Miranda. After a while, Guan came back with the results from the appraisal and gave a rough estimate. Altogether, Cyclo would receive 10,000 gold coins, which was the same as 100 platinum coins. Cyclo was speechless. When he used to work as a clock technician, he only earned 1 platinum coin per year. Now he was getting 100 years worth of his old salary all at once. He nervously asked if it was really okay for him to get that much. Guan confirmed it was. Every monster Cyclo brought wasn't recorded before, so of course the reward was that high. Cyclo understood. He thought that if he had discovered his true powers as a clock user earlier, maybe he could have spent his life laughing with everyone. But now, that no longer mattered to him. At that moment, Guan lowered his head and said sorry to Cyclo. He apologized for not doing anything while Cyclo was being treated badly. As another human being, he felt it was right to say sorry. He had known Cyclo was being abused, but since Cyclo was a well-known criminal slave, Guan chose to support the adventurers for the good of the guild. Cyclo understood that the guildmaster had ignored his suffering. Still, he agreed that it was probably the best choice for the guild. After thinking quietly for a moment, he said it was a selfish decision. Guan asked him to try and see it that way. This moment helped Cyclo realize that the guildmaster wasn't his enemy, so he asked for 100 platinum coins to buy his freedom from being a criminal slave. He also showed his criminal document, which stated that he had to pay 10,000 gold coins. Guan had almost forgotten about the guild's redemption system. Cyclo said he wanted to be free and become a legal adventurer. He asked if the guildmaster could help with that. Guan smiled and said he would. Cyclo was happy that Guan understood him quickly, and without waiting, he broke his own collar. The next morning, Cyclo woke up feeling rested. It had been a long time since he last slept in a real bed. When he looked out the window, he remembered going back to the garbage dump, but the girl he saw earlier was no longer there. He thought he must have imagined her since it didn't make sense for anyone to be there. Later at the Adventurers Guild, the receptionist greeted him and said she would call the guildmaster right away. Cyclo thanked her, though he still wasn't used to how differently she treated him now. Soon, Guan showed up and said Cyclo's adventurer registration was complete. The receptionist also confirmed that his deposit account had been set up. Cyclo was surprised by how fast everything had been done and thanked them again. Guan then gave Cyclo his guild card, proof that he was now an adventurer. Cyclo was confused when he saw the card was black. He had never seen one like it before and asked what rank it meant. Adventurers were ranked by their strength. When Cyclo used to work as a porter, he had the lowest rank. F ranks went from F to D for beginners, B and C for team fighters, A for strong solo fighters, and S for people with rare skills. Above them were the legendary ranked adventurers. Guan explained that Cyclo's black card was actually a legendary card. As for his exact rank, he told Cyclo to check it for himself. Cyclo was taken to a room with a special machine. Unlike the usual machines that had simple levers, this one looked more advanced. Guan said the normal machine wouldn't have worked for someone like Cyclo. Cyclo looked at the device and said he knew how to use it. He had never done a status check before when he was a porter, so he was curious to see how strong he had become since entering the deep hole. As soon as he pulled the lever, a bright light came from the machine. A screen showed his stats. Everything was at S level or higher. His guild rank was listed as triple S. Cyclo couldn't believe it. Guan said the results matched what Cyclo had achieved. Cyclo still thought it was hard to believe. Guan then brought up his sister Alice the Great Sage. She was an S-rank adventurer, and even she only had S-rank stats in her strongest areas, with the rest being A or B. But Cyclo had gone beyond all of that. Guan said it was something extremely rare in history. Cyclo thought it was crazy. It didn't even feel real to him. Suddenly, the guildmaster said he had a request for Cyclo. He asked if Cyclo was willing to meet the city lord. Cyclo was confused by the sudden request. Guan explained that he had told the lord about Cyclo and the lord became interested. He wanted to hear more directly from Cyclo. Cyclo went quiet. He thought this could be a chance to connect with someone powerful. Maybe he could use that to get back at the people who had treated him badly. He quickly agreed, since the offer sounded good for him too. Guan was pleased, but suggested that Cyclo dress properly first. Soon after, Cyclo stepped into a shop that looked expensive. He felt nervous as he introduced himself to the clerk and asked for equipment. The clerk asked for his guild card and was shocked to see he was SSS ranked. She quickly ran off and asked him to wait. An old man appeared and greeted Cyclo. He was surprised to meet an SSS ranked adventurer and promised to make the best equipment for him. Cyclo noticed the old man's hands. They looked like the hands of someone who had worked for many years, an artisan. Cyclo believed he would do a good job and asked how long it would take. The old man asked him to wait a moment and said his job skill was Grand Couturier, a high-level tailor. As soon as he touched the needle and thread, he started moving fast, so fast that Cyclo saw blurs of his hands. It was like watching a music conductor in action. In no time, the clothes were finished. Cyclo liked how they looked, but something felt strange. The old man asked him to place his hand near the robe. When he did, a pattern showed up. It looked like the hands of a clock, and the robe automatically equipped itself on him. Cyclo felt like it was a perfect fit the moment he wore it. The old man explained that the pattern showed the wearer's natural magical energy and asked if Cyclo liked it. Cyclo smiled and said he loved it, thanking the old man. The old man smiled back. The clerk also suggested some extra items. Cyclo bought a belt, gloves, and boots. With that, Cyclo was ready to move forward. The next day, in a big mansion, a man said sorry for making his guests wait. He said his name was Demos Northfolia, and with him was his son, Cruz Northfolia. Cruz nervously said hello. Cyclo also introduced himself, but he was more focused on Cruz, who was staring at him with curious eyes. Deimos explained that his son really wanted to meet Cyclo because he looked up to adventurers. Cyclo noticed that Demos had called Cruz his son, and when he looked again, Cruz was dressed up like a noble's daughter, which surprised him. Deimos sat down and said there were 3 things he wanted to talk about. Cyclo already had an idea of what was coming. Before they started, Cyclo made it clear that he wasn't going to act overly polite just because Deimos was a noble. He said he came as an equal to talk, not to bow down. Guan felt a little embarrassed by Cyclo's bold attitude. Cyclo reminded them that it was Deimos who needed something from him, so the one who should be respectful was Deimos, not him. Guan sighed. Cruz looked at Cyclo with wide eyes, thinking he was cool. Deimos smiled a little and said he didn't plan to act all high and mighty in front of someone as strong as an SSS-ranked adventurer. Cyclo told Guan that Deimos seemed like a reasonable man after all. Then Deimos got to the main point. He wanted to buy information about the deep hole and was ready to pay at least 100 platinum coins. Cyclo was surprised. Deimos asked if that amount was enough and Cyclo said it was fair. Cyclo told Deimos everything he saw and went through inside the deep hole. Deimos thanked him because the information was already more than enough. Still, he couldn't believe that the place Cyclo fell into was only the middle layers, not even the deepest part. Cyclo reminded him about the payment. Deimos told him not to worry and moved on to the next topic. Deimos said he didn't believe Cyclo was a criminal. Cyclo was surprised and asked if that meant he was wrongly accused. Deimos said yes. He had checked the trial records and found them full of problems. To him, calling an SSS-ranked adventurer a criminal based on those records didn't make sense. He wanted to say more, but since it was getting late, he invited Cyclo to stay for dinner. He also said his son would be glad. Cyclo tried to say no, but then saw Cruz looking sad, so he agreed, and Cruz looked happier. As the food was being served, Deimos continued talking. He said he didn't know what the capital had decided, but in his land, where they had their own rules, Cyclo was free. He told Cyclo he could accept requests like normal. Cyclo stayed quiet for a moment, then called Deimos a weirdo. Deimos said he heard that often. When all the food was ready, Cruz said he wanted Cyclo to try all of Northfolia's special dishes. Cyclo thanked him. He couldn't even remember the last time he had a real meal. His body didn't feel hungry anymore because it had been fixed at a certain time. He didn't need food, but he still ate some. To his surprise, he felt something warm and familiar. He kept eating the soup and bread. It had been a long time since he had eaten real food, and it tasted so good that he started crying. Deimos and Cruz just smiled and asked if he wanted more. Cyclo wiped his tears and asked if he could. For now, he felt he could trust these people, at least a little. After the meal, Deimos went ahead with his final request, something only an SSS-ranked adventurer like Cyclo could do. He wanted Cyclo to explore the deep hole. Cyclo agreed right away, knowing that it would help him grow stronger too. It was like solving two problems at once. Deimos was happy to hear that, but his real goal was to completely conquer the deep hole. Fully conquering a dungeon meant beating the guardian that protected the deepest floor and shutting down the dungeon's power. When a dungeon was conquered, the traps disappeared, the number of monsters dropped, and the whole dungeon slowly stopped working. Cyclo asked if that was really okay. After all, Northfolia had become rich and strong because of the dungeon. Deimos admitted that was true. The land's success had grown with the dungeon, but the disasters that hit the land also came from the deep hole. Cyclo remembered how monsters once poured out from the dungeon in an event called a stampede. He also pointed out that Northfolia had to rely on the dungeon's resources just to fight off those threats. If fully conquering the dungeon could lower the danger, then Deimos would be thankful for his help. Cyclo imagined a monster from the middle floors destroying the whole city alone. He remembered the kind people he had met in Northfolia. That helped him decide. He agreed to take on the third request and asked what the reward would be. Deimos calmly told him to name his price. Cyclo asked if he really meant it. Deimos promised to give any reward Cyclo wanted, as long as it was something he could provide. That made the mission clear. They had to conquer the deep hole to protect the people from future monster attacks. Cyclo smiled for a moment and said that Deimos was not like other nobles. Deimos was glad to hear that, but he also told Cyclo there was one more thing he needed to complete the conquest: a party. Cyclo suddenly felt angry. He didn't understand why he needed others when he could handle the dungeon alone. Then memories of Maria and Alice came back to him. He told Deimos that he was done trusting people who might betray him. Deimos had expected that answer, so he recommended a place where Cyclo might meet people he could trust. Cyclo went to a place that didn't look like what a nobleman would have suggested. He expected it to be fancy, but it wasn't. Deimos had suggested buying slaves who were controlled by subjugation magic. That way, they would be at least a little more trustworthy. Cyclo thought that made sense. Not long after, a slave trader greeted Cyclo with a smile. He asked what kind of slaves Cyclo wanted. Cyclo explained that he needed slaves for dungeon exploring, and they had to be bound by subjugation magic. The shop was located just behind the Adventurers Guild, so there was a cycle happening. Some slaves became adventurers, and some adventurers ended up as slaves. Cyclo couldn't help but think the guildmaster must be unusual for letting this happen. The slave trader soon brought out a group of strong-looking male slaves and even a dog. They were former B and C ranked adventurers. One bald man joked that he was just babysitting someone in a dungeon and called it an easy job. Cyclo saw that this man was the strongest of the group, but he seemed full of pride and arrogance. Their skills were about the same as Cyclo's, so he asked to see another group of slaves. After a while, Cyclo realized the ex-adventurers weren't useful. None of them could handle the deeper parts of the deep hole. The slave trader began to worry that none of the slaves were good enough for Cyclo. That's when Cyclo decided to change what he was looking for. He no longer wanted strength. He wanted someone who was obedient and easy to work with. The trader then explained that, aside from adventurers, there were 3 kinds of slaves that worked well with subjugation magic: criminal slaves, pleasure slaves, and status slaves. Cyclo became interested in the last one. The trader explained that status slaves were people who were either born into that role or forced into it by law. The slaves in this group had been demoted because of their job skills. Cyclo was surprised to hear that and asked the trader to bring one out. The trader asked if he was sure, and Cyclo, getting annoyed, told him to do it already. The trader came back and said he didn't usually do this, but he could show one of their slaves. He covered his nose as a dirty girl walked in with chains around her wrists. Cyclo's eyes opened wide when he saw her. She looked familiar. The trader said her job skill was heretic. When Cyclo looked at her face closely, he realized she was the same girl he saw before at the garbage dump. He used his skill to analyze her again and found out she had been living in the trash ever since. Cyclo got angry and asked why she was being treated like this. The trader simply said it was because of the law. He explained that the Church of Skill Selection had ruled that anyone with a skill that went against their faith should not be treated like a human. Cyclo was furious. He remembered how he also suffered after getting the clock user skill. He used to think no one had it worse than him, but now he couldn't believe he had felt sorry for himself. At least he still had the freedom to live like a normal person. Cyclo began to question everything: the country, the religion, and even the God who allowed this system to exist. He thought it was wrong that people were judged only by their job skills. The trader assumed the girl wasn't good enough for Cyclo, but Cyclo surprised him by saying he wanted to buy her. The trader looked shocked and confused. Cyclo told him to go ahead with the sale. After the trader left, Cyclo got down on one knee in front of the girl and smiled. He asked her name. The girl's eyes lit up and she said her name was Mist Carmine. Cyclo moved his hand and Mist flinched and shut her eyes. He said Mist was a nice name and told her his own name. When he gently tapped her head, he saw that she was shaking. He realized she was scared, which made sense after all she had been through. He wanted her to know she was safe now. Cyclo promised he would never hurt her and gave her a hug. Mist looked confused, unsure of how to react. Cyclo then made a vow. He said he would protect her from now on, and if anyone tried to hurt her, he would stop them. He promised, and this time he meant it. Mist slowly stopped shaking. She felt calmer and thanked him. Soon the slave trader came back with the subjugation contract. He told Cyclo to pour his mana into the magic circle to finish it. Cyclo calmly did so, but his power was so strong that it surprised the trader. A glowing mark then appeared on Mist's neck. The trader explained that it was proof of the contract. To give Mist commands, Cyclo only had to use mana and speak. The trader also said that the mark could cause pain if strong mana was used, even from far away. Cyclo said he didn't think he would ever need that, but he would remember it. Once the contract was complete, Cyclo asked Mist to come with him. Mist said his hand would get dirty if he kept holding her arm. Cyclo told her not to worry because from now on, they were going to be companions. In a flashback, Mist had decided to work hard again by helping a priest. She cleaned the windows of the church. The old priest was worried she might be cold, but Mist told him she was fine and asked if there was anything else she could do. The priest told her to go home because it was already late. He said that someone as good as her would surely be watched over by God, and would one day receive a special skill. Mist went home with those words in her heart. When she got home, her mother scolded her for being late and for going out without permission. She told Mist to clean the house while she was gone. She complained that children were just a burden. That night, Mist only had leftover scraps for dinner. Still, she thought it was okay. She believed that if she kept being good, she would be rewarded someday. But during her coming-of-age ceremony, Mist received a heretic skill. Everyone around her was shocked. Mist asked the priest what her skill meant, but the kind man who once cared for her no longer wanted her near. The people were terrified that someone with a cursed skill had appeared. Mist was stunned. She believed she had behaved better than anyone else and had worked so hard. Yet in the end, not even God helped her. She looked toward her mother, who stood among the crowd, but all she got was a cold and angry stare. At that moment, Mist began to believe she had always been a bad person, someone who should never have been born. She started to apologize for being alive. She was soon sold to a slave trader and made to live among trash. She kept saying sorry for being born. One day, the slave trader told her that someone was interested in a heretic like her. Mist opened her eyes slowly and saw someone she had spoken to before. She didn't understand why he came for her. When he reached out his hand, she thought he would hit her, but instead he gave her the warmest pat she had ever felt. He told her not to be afraid because he wouldn't hurt her. But Mist believed he was wrong. She still thought she was a bad person. That belief started to break when the man, Cyclo, gently promised to protect her. He said he would never let anyone harm her because of her skill. He asked her to be brave. Mist reached out and held his hand. For the first time, she felt something change inside. No one had ever stood by her. Not her mother, not the people in her town, not even God. Cyclo was the first person to say he would be on her side. From that moment on, Mist chose to move forward for her master's sake. He gave her the strength to fight against the fate she had already accepted. She cried and silently thanked Cyclo. The two traveled by carriage to an unknown place. Mist eventually fell asleep and Cyclo gently woke her up. She said sorry for dozing off, but he told her it was okay. She asked where they were, and he said they had just arrived at the estate of the Lord of Northfolia. She was surprised, and he explained that they needed the Lord's help for a few things. When they reached the front door, Cruz happily greeted Cyclo. He asked about the girl, and Cyclo said Mist was part of his team. He added that he came to ask for a favor. Cyclo still saw Cruz as someone cheerful like a friendly dog, while Mist thought Cruz looked like a princess. Cruz said it was no problem and even offered to get some clothes ready for Mist. She was confused about where they were going, but they ended up in a bath area. Cruz told them to take their time and relax. Mist was surprised. Cyclo asked if she wanted to bathe together and offered to wash her back. Mist became embarrassed. Cyclo laughed a little and said she still seemed like a child. He guessed she was very tired and might not be safe alone in a big bath. Mist stayed quiet for a moment, then asked how old he thought she was. Cyclo guessed she was around 10 and asked why. Mist told him she was actually 17. Cyclo was shocked and said sorry, but Mist told him it was fine. They both stayed quiet for a while. Cyclo apologized again for the age mistake, but he explained he still thought it would be dangerous for her to be alone. He promised he had no bad thoughts and wouldn't do anything wrong. While they bathed, Mist thought her master was a strange person. She saw that he was trying hard not to make her uncomfortable, but he still cared about her safety. She told him it would have been easier if he just gave her an order. Cyclo understood what she meant, but he didn't want to use commands for something like that. He wanted her to be as free as possible. Mist started crying again. When Cyclo asked why, she said it was nothing. She just felt happy that her master could be so kind. Cyclo blushed when he saw her smile and felt a little flustered. Afterwards, Cyclo drank some tea while he waited for Mist. When Mist arrived, she was wearing a dress. Cyclo said it looked good on her and she thanked him. She shared that the people in the mansion dressed her using Cruz's old clothes and even fixed her hair. She felt it was more than she deserved. Cyclo only smiled. He then wanted to talk about her health. Mist didn't know what he meant. Cyclo searched his clock storage and found something. Mist guessed it was part of her master's skill. Cyclo brought out some energy cubes and explained that they were made from his life energy. He asked her to eat them. Mist was confused and asked if he was serious. He said they were special and told her to trust him. Mist was unsure because they didn't look like food and her eyes were starting to tear up from worry. Cyclo asked her to believe in him. Because he was her master, Mist didn't hesitate and put one in her mouth. She was surprised that it tasted sweet and made her feel lighter. Then her body started to shine and she said she felt warm. Cyclo hugged her and told her it meant her body was healing quickly. Mist's weak and thin body began to change. It was as if time sped up for her. Her body, which looked like that of a 10-year-old, now looked like that of a 17-year-old. Cyclo was shocked by how much she changed. He helped her to a mirror. When Mist saw herself, she was surprised. Cyclo reminded her how powerful the cubes were. Mist agreed and said they were amazing. She also thought Cyclo was amazing, like a god. He said that was too much. But to Mist, it wasn't. Her life had changed in just one day, and her heart was full of happiness. After that, Cyclo went straight to the main reason he brought Mist. He told her he needed someone to go with him while exploring dungeons as an adventurer. Because of that, he gave her just one order. Mist clenched her fist, wondering what it could be. At the same time, Cyclo thought about the women who didn't believe in him before. His only order was for Mist to believe in him, no matter what. Mist was surprised and asked if that was really all. Cyclo said he didn't need anything else. She then sat in front of him with her back turned and showed her crest. She guessed that Cyclo had been through something difficult too, but believed he could relax now. Cyclo placed the order on her and said sorry. Mist said it was okay and held his hand. She said that even without the slave command, she promised to keep believing in him. Cyclo stayed quiet for a moment, then thanked her. Meanwhile, at the Adventurers Guild, a woman wearing a hood walked to the front desk and asked if anything interesting had happened while they were away. Other adventurers nearby talked about how she was part of an all S-ranked team. The receptionist then told her about a skilled adventurer who had just returned from the unexplored parts of the deep hole. The woman was surprised, then smiled. She asked to hear more about the story. Soon after, Cyclo told Mist it was time to try using her skill, so they went outside together. Mist looked worried and asked if it would be safe. She said her skill was called Heretic, and if it turned out to be dangerous it might hurt Cyclo or the people in the mansion. Cyclo called her kind and told her it would be okay. He promised to handle whatever happened. His words helped Mist feel calmer and she said she was ready. Cyclo said he would send some mana into her and told her to try and feel the change. That was how she could learn to sense mana. Mist said she would do her best. When he started, she made a small sound. Cyclo asked if she was okay. Mist said she was just a little surprised. He focused again. Normally people learned to sense mana when they got their job skill. Cyclo wondered if no one had taught Mist this before. Mist then asked if something was wrong. Cyclo asked how it was going and Mist said she was starting to get it. He praised her for learning quickly. Mist looked shy and said she felt embarrassed but didn't mind when he patted her head. Cyclo thought she looked cute. He told her the next step was to move the mana around inside her body. He explained that there were places where mana flowed and that her skill would be found in one of those spots. Some people believed it was connected to the soul. He thought this part was hard for most people, but he was willing to wait. To his surprise, Mist said she had found it. She said it was inside her, but it felt like it was also nowhere. It was a strange feeling. Cyclo told her that was the right spot and told her to send mana into it. Mist followed his instructions and activated her Heretic skill. It was a skill that people usually feared. A huge magic circle appeared above them. Cyclo realized it was a holy magic healing spell that covered a large area. He recognized it as Holy Heal. Excited, he hugged Mist and said she was amazing. Mist shouted in surprise, saying her skill was like that of a saint. Cyclo said it was rare to even use holy magic at all. Most people started with simple, single-target healing spells. He repeated how incredible her skill was and hugged her again. Mist said he was squeezing her too tightly. Cyclo apologized and said he would be more careful. Mist activated her second skill. A large barrier formed around them. Cyclo looked closely and realized it was barrier magic, a type of defensive shield. He was shocked she could already use intermediate-level magic. He then explained that Mist's abilities were split between light magic and holy magic. Both were known for offense and support. Mist was surprised that Cyclo knew so much about her skills. Cyclo stayed quiet for a moment, then shared that he once had a fiancé with a holy-type job skill. Mist noticed his expression was the same as when he told her to trust him no matter what. She realized it was something she shouldn't ask about again. She said nothing more and instead activated her third skill. Cyclo grew excited, expecting something powerful. Mist focused and explained that she could fix different things with this skill. Cyclo asked what she meant. She gave examples like making a nearby flower healthy again or removing a curse from her master's hair. Cyclo paused, then shared his concern that her third skill might be restoration magic, a legendary spell said to restore anything. Mist was shocked and asked if she really had such power. Cyclo said he had only heard of it before. He wondered if those were her only skills, but Mist said she had 2 more. Cyclo thought for a moment. Even saints were only known to have 4 skills. Mist had 5, and each one was as strong as or even stronger than a saint's. Holy magic users were rare and respected by the church, so he didn't understand why Mist was rejected by them. He began to question if the skill selection ritual was truly accurate, but in the end he no longer cared. What mattered now was Mist's power. He asked her to activate her 4th skill. When she did, a pair of transparent wings appeared on Cyclo's back. Mist apologized for the sudden effect, but Cyclo told her not to worry. He felt stronger, and Mist said the skill also weakened enemies around them. Cyclo realized it was a power that both helped allies and weakened opponents. When he asked how much mana it used, Mist said it was more than the previous 3 skills. Knowing that, Cyclo suggested saving it for special situations. He decided to call it Sanctuary. Mist seemed confused at first, but Cyclo explained that naming a skill could make it stronger. It helped the caster picture the effect clearly. He said the name meant something like a sacred domain. Mist liked the name and thanked him. Cyclo smiled and told her she could name it herself, but Mist said she already liked the one he gave. Soon, the boost effect wore off. Cyclo explained that some skills had lingering effects while others didn't. He told her there were 2 kinds of skills, active and passive. Active skills needed mana to activate. Passive skills were always working in the background. Mist understood that her magic worked because she had passive skills in holy and light magic. Cyclo praised her for learning quickly. Mist then chose to show her final skill. As soon as she activated it, she felt lighter on her feet. Cyclo asked her to try jumping. With very little effort, Mist jumped much higher than expected. Cyclo caught her and guessed the final skill might be related to physical strength or weapon handling. He suggested they visit the town later to look for weapons and armor. Mist asked if her skills would be useful to him. Cyclo said her talent was even greater than a saint's. Mist was happy to hear that and asked him to put her down. Cyclo apologized. After that, the two went back to eat lunch. Still, hearing the word saint brought back memories for Cyclo, but he reminded himself not to think about the past anymore. They had already chosen to walk different paths from that day on. Later in North Folia City, Cyclo noticed Mist staring at some grilled meat and asked if something was wrong. She looked confused and he wondered if she wanted to eat it. Mist tried to say no, but Cyclo told her not to hold back. He quickly bought 2 meat skewers and gave one to her. Mist smiled and ate happily, saying it tasted really good. Cyclo agreed with her. Then Mist noticed him watching her. Cyclo said he felt happy when she looked happy. Mist blushed and said that catching her off guard like that wasn't fair. As they kept walking, they heard some townspeople talking about the royal capital's saint starting training to fight the Demon Lord's army. They wished the saint would visit their town. Hearing that made Cyclo remember something from the past. Mist asked if they were talking about her master's fiancé who could use holy magic. Cyclo said yes, but explained that it was all in the past now. He shared that his job skill was called clock user. Mist was surprised and said it sounded like an amazing skill. Cyclo thanked her for saying that. However, he also said that because of this skill his engagement was called off. His former fiancé couldn't trust a rare skill like clock user the way Mist did. Meanwhile, in the royal capital, Maria was quietly praying. She remembered how Raven once tried to comfort her after what happened with Cyclo. He had promised to do his best for her too, just so he could see her smile again. Maria blushed when she thought about his words and prayed that Raven would return safely from the expedition. Just then a clergyman ran into the chapel with urgent news. Maria asked what was going on. The clergyman told her that her assistant had been committing fraud. Maria was shocked and asked for more information. She learned that her assistant had not only stolen reward and activity money but had also embezzled her personal donations. Maria then remembered that she had trusted her assistant to send money and letters to Cyclo. That meant Cyclo had been telling the truth when he said he never received anything from her. Maria dropped to her knees as memories came rushing back. She remembered what happened the day before the trial. Raven had visited her and said Cyclo was arrested for several serious crimes. At first Maria thought it was just a mistake, but Raven kept talking and said Cyclo had been spending the money she sent him on selfish desires. Maria felt hurt and betrayed. While she was still sad and confused, Raven comforted her with kind words. He promised to stay by her side and even offered to go to court with her to find out the truth. Maria agreed to go with him. Now she finally understood. Raven had planned it all. He tried to make Cyclo look guilty. Maria wanted to believe that Raven had been honest, but deep down she knew he had fooled her. A few days later, Maria welcomed Raven back from his expedition. He asked her if she wanted to go out with him after her training, but he quickly noticed that something was wrong. She was quiet and sweating nervously. Maria finally spoke and told him that her former assistant had stolen money. She also remembered the assistant saying that Cyclo was giving money to criminals, even though that wasn't true. She wondered why the assistant would say such things when Cyclo never received the money at all. That was when Raven dropped his act. He called her foolish for figuring it out so late. He said the constable had asked him to help frame Cyclo, and he agreed because he also wanted Cyclo out of the way. Raven admitted he wanted to take Cyclo's place so he could win Maria over. He was shocked at how easily everyone believed him, just because he was the Duke's heir and a hero. At that moment, Maria realized Raven wasn't a hero at all. He was just a cruel man who ruined lives for fun. When Maria tried to run away, Raven quickly grabbed her. She told him to let go so she could reveal the truth. But Raven reminded her that she was also part of it. She froze. Memories of her childhood sweetheart came rushing back when they were kids, when they were separated after the ritual and during the court trial. She realized that she had played a role in sending the one she loved into hell. She stared at Raven with hatred and swore she would never forgive him. Raven stared back and laughed, saying she still didn't understand what kind of trouble she was really in. Maria then saw the truth. She wasn't much different from him. She had been part of the same lies. Her strength left her and she fell to the floor. Raven told her to follow his every command now since she was also guilty. What neither of them knew was that someone was listening to their entire conversation from outside the room. Meanwhile, Cyclo thought his ex-fiancée was doing fine with the man who had the hero skill. Still, he found it strange that he didn't feel angry or bitter. He just accepted that they would never see each other again. Mist said that what happened to her master was tough. Cyclo only smiled. He said seeing Mist happy now made him feel happy too. At that moment, Mist understood what she had to do. She looked at her master and promised to stop holding back and to live happily. She asked him to give her lots of happiness. Cyclo told her to take as much happiness as she wanted. After that, the two of them went to a nearby shop to buy some weapons. Later, at a well-known shop, Mist quietly asked her master how she looked in her new gear. Cyclo blushed when he saw her and almost said she looked cute, but quickly changed what he was going to say. Instead, he told her she looked like a real adventurer. Mist felt happy and relaxed after hearing that. Cyclo then asked how the new staff felt. Mist said she thought she could use both magic and staff moves with it. Nearby, the old tailor watched them with a smile. A shop worker noticed and said the tailor looked cheerful. The old man agreed and said he was. The worker added that the tailor used to admire adventurers when he was younger. The tailor explained that he dreamed of becoming one when he was a child but gave up after getting a tailor-related job skill. Cyclo felt like he could relate. Before they left, the old man wished them well on their adventure and asked them to enjoy it for his sake too. Outside, Mist said the old master looked a bit lonely, and Cyclo agreed. He said that even if someone's job skill let them do great things, not reaching their original dream could still feel sad. Mist then asked if Cyclo had a dream too. Cyclo smiled and said he would only share it if it ever had a chance to come true. Later at the Adventurers Guild, Cyclo and Mist arrived. Cyclo said he wanted to register Mist as an adventurer. Mist looked nervous. They were given a form to fill out. Cyclo stopped when he reached the part asking about skills. When the receptionist read the form, she saw that Mist was listed as a slave and had the heretic skill. She was so surprised that she spoke out loud. Everyone nearby turned to stare at Mist. She could feel their eyes on her. They were shocked that a young girl had such a dangerous-sounding skill. Some even said they wouldn't go near her. Suddenly, someone in the crowd asked angrily if she was really a heretic. A man with long hair wearing armor and holding a spear stepped forward and glared at them. Cyclo asked who he was and what he wanted with Mist. The man got upset and called Cyclo rude for not recognizing the emblem on his chest. Cyclo replied that he had never seen it before but still confirmed that Mist's skill was indeed heretic. The man realized Cyclo must be from the countryside and told him to come outside so he could teach him a lesson. Cyclo agreed to fight. Just then, the guildmaster showed up and said he would take charge of the duel. Cyclo wondered if he was going to stop it, but the guildmaster said he only wanted to settle things properly with an official duel like high-ranked adventurers should. The long-haired man seemed interested. He told Cyclo to follow him to the training grounds and called him a country bumpkin. He thought Cyclo looked weak and was probably only strong enough to be a C rank at most. He planned to embarrass Cyclo in front of the other adventurers. Cyclo asked who the man even was, since he acted like he was famous. The guildmaster then introduced him as Reinhardt the Flash Saint. He explained that Reinhardt had a job skill called Lance Saint, was a holy knight of the church, and was an S-ranked adventurer. The guildmaster also said Reinhardt had just come back from a long journey, so it wasn't strange that Cyclo hadn't heard of him before. Cyclo finally understood why Reinhardt didn't like his heretic skill. He was a holy knight of the church. Then he noticed Mist looking worried. He smiled at her and promised that he would win. Mist looked relieved and said she believed in him. Later at the training grounds, Cyclo stood ready to face Reinhardt. The other adventurers whispered that Cyclo was being reckless and expected him to lose right away. Many women cheered for Reinhardt. Meanwhile, a hooded woman in the crowd stayed silent and just watched as everything unfolded. Reinhardt complained about how late Cyclo was, calling him a country bumpkin. Cyclo admitted it was true. The guildmaster explained that the duel would only end when someone gave up or couldn't fight anymore. If Reinhardt won, Cyclo could register as an adventurer, but he wouldn't be treated as a real person. Cyclo replied that if he won, Reinhardt should stay away from Mist. The guildmaster started the duel. Reinhardt quickly attacked with a series of fast spear thrusts. He was sure Cyclo couldn't dodge them, but since it was a duel, he aimed away from the vital spots. Cyclo calmly avoided every attack and pulled out his clock sword. He stepped in close and sliced Reinhardt's spear with ease, as if it were nothing. Reinhardt was shocked to see his broken weapon. Cyclo said the fight was over, then kicked Reinhardt in the chest. The kick was so strong it broke his chest armor and sent him flying into a wall. He passed out on the spot. The nearby adventurers watched in shock. The guildmaster announced Cyclo as the winner. The adventurers were confused. They hadn't even seen Cyclo move. They now understood how strong he really was. Mist ran over to him. Cyclo said he kept his promise and won. Mist praised him. The guildmaster also praised Cyclo, saying he hoped no one would ever try to mess with Cyclo or his party again just because they were skilled. Then the guildmaster made a surprising announcement. Cyclo had become the first adventurer in history to reach and return from the deepest part of the deep hole. He declared Cyclo an SSS rank adventurer. Everyone was shocked that such a legendary rank really existed. They celebrated, cheering for Cyclo as their strongest adventurer. Cyclo thought the guildmaster might have set up the duel just to make this announcement. The guildmaster acted innocent but said it was a problem when church-linked adventurers acted like they were above others. With all the noise in the guild, Cyclo quietly grabbed Mist and slipped away. He moved so fast that the others didn't even notice until it was too late. In the crowd, the hooded woman also disappeared without a trace. Meanwhile, Cyclo and Mist reached the top of the city walls. Mist stayed quiet the whole time, clearly feeling nervous. Cyclo reminded her that her first day as an adventurer was coming up the next day. Mist said she was okay with that, but when Cyclo held her earlier, she told him he should give her a warning next time. She felt really embarrassed when it happened. Cyclo finally realized how awkward the moment was and said sorry. Mist quickly said she didn't mean it in a bad way, but the moment had made her heart race. She just wished she had more time to prepare herself around him. Just then, someone nearby called them lovebirds and asked if she could talk to them. A woman stepped forward and introduced herself as Kareem Elementius. She said she was part of the same team as the Flash Saint, the one Cyclo had beaten, and that she was also an S-ranked adventurer. Cyclo noticed that this woman had been fast enough to follow his movements during the duel. He began to wonder what she really wanted from them. Cyclo asked again if her name was really Kareem and wanted to know why she had followed them. He said that depending on her reason he would decide what to do with her. Kareem told him to stop and explained that she wasn't their enemy. Cyclo said it was his choice to decide whether she was an enemy or not and told her to start talking. Kareem said she only had one reason: she wanted to join their group. This confused Cyclo, since Kareem was part of the Flash Saints team. Kareem admitted she was, but that was exactly why she wanted to leave. She said Reinhardt was the only one in that group who had the skills to work with, even though she thought he was annoying. She didn't really want to be part of his team, but she had no better option. What finally pushed her away was how Reinhardt treated Mist. He refused to let Mist register as an adventurer or even be seen as a real person. That attitude disgusted Kareem. Cyclo could tell she wasn't lying. Then Kareem revealed she had a unique job skill that was difficult to explain. Because of that, she couldn't stand people who judged others based on their skills. Watching Cyclo knock out Reinhardt made her feel relieved and satisfied. Cyclo was happy for her and was about to leave, but Kareem stopped him. She said she wasn't just thanking him, she also admired how he thought and how strong he was. She wanted to join him for her own reasons too. When Cyclo asked what those reasons were, Kareem acted playfully and said they could talk about it the next day at the guild, especially since Mist hadn't finished registering yet. Cyclo agreed and Kareem left, saying she would be waiting for his answer. After that, Cyclo asked Mist what was bothering her. Mist said it was because Kareem had called her by her name instead of heretic. Cyclo agreed that Kareem didn't seem like a bad person after all. The next day, the receptionist said sorry for what had happened before. She had spoken too loudly, which caused the trouble. She said she was ready to accept any punishment Cyclo thought was fair. Cyclo looked to Mist. Mist said she wasn't upset because her master had protected her. The receptionist thanked them for forgiving her. Cyclo then asked if they could borrow a room to talk. But before the receptionist could answer, they saw Kareem already on the second floor. She smiled and waved at them, saying she had been waiting. The receptionist asked if they were with Kareem. Kareem then asked her to guide Cyclo and Mist to the room. Other adventurers nearby were surprised that Cyclo knew Kareem. Still, they weren't too shocked. He was SS ranked after all. Cyclo then asked what kind of person Kareem was. The receptionist said Kareem was an amazing adventurer, even said to be as skilled as the famous Great Sage from the royal capital. Hearing that title made Cyclo feel uneasy. The Great Sage was his sister Alice. He remembered how the guildmaster once told him that Alice supported the reports about him, but also said her brother was a hopeless failure. Cyclo knew that if he continued as an adventurer, people would always connect him to Alice. One day he would even see her again. When that time came, he wondered if he could stay calm. Mist noticed him holding his arm tightly and asked if he was okay. Cyclo told her he was fine. Right now he had to focus on talking with Kareem. When they entered the room, they saw a table full of food. Kareem happily told them to eat as much as they wanted. But Cyclo wasn't impressed. He said they didn't come for a party. Kareem said she knew but still wanted to start things in a friendly way. Kareem then asked Cyclo if he knew about a place called Aelreese. Cyclo wondered if she meant the desert country far away. Kareem admitted she originally came from Aelreese. Because of her family tradition, she had traveled here to become an adventurer. Cyclo then asked if this tradition was the goal she had mentioned the day before. Kareem felt happy that he remembered. Cyclo said she had made it sound very important. Kareem then revealed her true goal. She wanted to bear the child of a strong man. Cyclo paused for a moment and wondered if there was something wrong with that idea. His calm reaction shocked Kareem and she called him dense. She explained that she wanted to have a baby with him, which was the reason she wanted to join his party. Cyclo could not believe what he had just heard. Mist immediately objected. She said it was not allowed. She strongly believed that wanting a child for such a reason without love was wrong. Kareem understood Mist's feelings and apologized for what she said. Even so, Kareem still truly wanted to form a party with Cyclo. She asked him what he thought about it. Cyclo took a deep breath and tried to calm himself. He said he wanted to explain his position first. He explained that he did not trust anyone except Mist. If he ever teamed up with Kareem, it would only be because there was a clear benefit for both him and Mist. Kareem then showed a confident smile and explained the advantages of having her in the party. She said there were 3 clear benefits. The first was her experience as an adventurer. She pointed out that Cyclo and Mist barely had any real adventuring experience. That was where she could help them. She could teach them important survival skills that every adventurer needed. The second advantage was party balance. Kareem noticed that Cyclo always fought on the front lines while also protecting Mist at the same time. She explained that this was not what a balanced party should look like. Cyclo realized she was right. Both he and Mist were better suited to stay in the rear and provide support. They clearly needed someone to stand at the front and draw enemy attention. Kareem explained that she had sword-type profession skills. If she took the front position, the party would become much more stable in battle. Cyclo thought Kareem was making sense so far, but he felt something was still missing. He believed her explanation needed one last push to fully convince him. He then asked about the third advantage she mentioned. Kareem explained that it was not meant for the whole party, but for Mist alone. She reminded everyone how Mist's heretic skill had been revealed during the duel. She said the guildmaster had given a warning. but only a small number of people were likely to listen. Because of the skill selection doctrine, citizens treated those who stood out very harshly. Cyclo agreed that this was true, but he did not understand how it connected to their current situation. Kareem then clearly pointed out that Mist would now face open hostility wherever she went. Cyclo stayed silent and looked at Mist, who could not hide the worry on her face. Kareem continued by saying that Mist was a girl, and Cyclo could not possibly stay by her side all the time. Because of that, she believed Mist needed someone else to protect her, and she was willing to take that role. Cyclo said that this would only make sense if Kareem was truly trustworthy as a bodyguard. Kareem earnestly pleaded with him and said she truly wanted to protect Mist. She explained that judging someone just because of their skill felt wrong to her and she could not accept that kind of thinking. Cyclo and Mist were both surprised by her words. Mist then told her master that she believed it was fine to trust Kareem. Cyclo asked if she was truly sure, since he remembered that Mist had once been afraid of other people. Mist explained that even though she was a heretic, she still wanted to believe in someone who showed her kindness. She said that because Cyclo had treated her so kindly, she had learned to feel the same way toward others. Cyclo became flustered and awkwardly agreed with her. Kareem felt relieved that things seemed settled. However, Cyclo admitted that he still did not fully trust Kareem. Because of that, he decided to test her. He said he wanted her to fight him and prove that she was strong enough to become his teammate. Kareem broke into a cold sweat and admitted that she would not be able to defeat him, even if he put it that way. Cyclo said he already knew that and only wanted to see how well she could hold her ground against him. He expected strength worthy of someone close to S rank. Kareem replied that she would do her best. Later in the Lord's mansion, Cyclo kept himself busy by drawing drafts of clocks once again. He focused on the papers in front of him and felt satisfied with his progress. His hands moved with care as he refined each sketch. It had been a long time since he had felt this calm and focused. Mist entered the room and gently reminded him to take a break. She placed a hot drink on his table and watched his work with interest. Cyclo explained that he had been creating designs for a magical device. He was working on detailed plans for a new magic tool that had never been made before. Mist felt amazed when she realized he was designing a magic tool on his own. Cyclo felt proud as he remembered being called a genius when he was young. For the first time in many years, he fully lost himself in his work and truly enjoyed the process. He explained that the blueprint was for something he called a gun. He described it as a magic tool that used the power of an explosion to send a piece of metal flying at very high speed. Even someone with little training could create power close to a simple spell, and the attack was hard to avoid. Over time, as fighters with greater combat skills appeared, the weapon became useless and outdated. Still, if he could rebuild it with magic, the result would be very different. Cyclo then activated his clock generation skill and created the needed gears. Mist watched closely and held her breath as he carefully assembled the parts. Before long, Cyclo completed his own version of the gun. He named it Mistiltine, an anti-monster weapon enhanced by his clockmaker skill. The weapon was made from an orichalcum alloy. It could fire normal ammunition as well as magic bullets. Its bullet speed far surpassed that of existing firearms. With power close to advanced magic, it could fight monsters found deep within the deep hole. Mist looked blank for a moment. Cyclo noticed her reaction and wondered what was wrong. Mist then asked if he had just created a magic tool from nothing. Cyclo calmly confirmed that he had. Mist asked if it happened instantly. Cyclo explained that he only needed the blueprints to be clear and fixed inside his mind. Mist suddenly grabbed his hand and showed her excitement. She spoke with strong admiration and praised him for being incredible. She believed his power was on the same level as a god. She warned him not to reveal such abilities to strangers, knowing how dangerous it could be. Cyclo said he understood and returned to his work for one final effort. Mist reminded him not to stay awake too late. She quietly watched him continue working, smiling as she stood nearby. She remembered asking him before if he also had dreams of his own. Cyclo had told her that he would share them once they were close to becoming real. Hearing this made her happy, and she hoped he would tell her again someday. Cyclo agreed and gently patted her head. Mist felt at ease and smiled softly. She then excused herself and wished him a good night. Cyclo drank the cup she had prepared before finally going to bed. The next day at the Adventurers Guild training ground, Kareem kept teasing Cyclo about the dark circles under his eyes. She assumed he had not slept well and grew excited, acting like a child before a school trip. Cyclo followed behind her and told her to stop. Kareem said she would not go easy on him just because he lacked sleep. Cyclo told her to fight seriously. Both of them stood at the center of the training ground. Kareem drew her sword. Cyclo pulled out his gun and fired several shots, one after another. Kareem ran across the field and avoided the bullets as she moved. She could not believe he was treating the fight lightly by using a long-range weapon like this. From the side, Mist watched the battle closely. She remembered her master explaining that the Mistiltine created for this fight had its power carefully adjusted. For S-ranked level adventurers, the real test was whether they could dodge the bullets or not. When the critical moment arrived, he would be depending on her healing magic. Mist silently prayed that both her master and Kareem would come out of the fight safely in the end. Cyclo did not stop firing as he moved across the training field. At the same time, Kareem kept dodging every bullet with ease. He assumed she was reading his aim, his body movement, and even the angle of his gun. He then realized her skill went far beyond what he had imagined. Because of that, he calmly added a second gun. Kareem was shocked by the sudden change. Cyclo noticed her reaction and wondered what was wrong. Kareem felt the fight had turned unfair with 2 guns in play. Even so, she continued to avoid the non-stop rain of bullets, though she knew she would soon be pushed into a corner. With normal guns, she could wait until the bullets ran out and then move in close. However, Cyclo's weapons were created through his own skill and they would never run dry. With no other choice, she decided to risk everything on a single move. She chose to close the distance at once and rush straight toward Cyclo. Both Cyclo and Mist were caught off guard by her sudden charge. Cyclo wondered what she was planning and assumed she had finally lost control. He switched to different bullets and kept firing while daring her to come closer. The bullets locked onto Kareem as they flew toward her. Even then, she showed no fear. She moved with confidence and sliced the bullets cleanly in half as they came at her. Cyclo was stunned by what he saw. The moment he lost focus, Kareem used the opening to strike. The sound of metal being hit rang through the field. Mist turned away and covered her eyes. Kareem's cape fell to the ground. Kareem quickly realized her attack had failed. Her sword had become stuck in one of Cyclo's guns, while the other gun was aimed at her head. Cyclo stated that the match had ended. Kareem agreed and admitted that even with him holding back, she could not win. Cyclo admitted that she had done well and performed better than he expected. He then explained that she had passed. Mist looked relieved and happy for her. Cyclo told Kareem that he would be relying on her from that moment on. Kareem replied that she expected the same from him. She leaned closer and whispered something bold and suggestive, leaving her meaning clear, to plant his seeds in her fields. Cyclo was left flustered and unsure how to react. Kareem laughed and teased him for his innocence. Mist asked what Kareem had said to her master, but Kareem brushed it off as a private matter. After that, she urged them to officially register as a party. Later at the Adventurers Guild, the receptionist confirmed that the 3 had formed a party. She asked for the party name and Cyclo chose the Wheel of Fate. On the way home, Cyclo thanked Mist for suggesting the name. Mist explained that she felt their party had been formed through a series of fateful meetings that all centered on her master. Cyclo agreed and said he liked how the name fit them. Kareem mentioned that her idea, the lovey-dovey heart-throbbing love nest party, was also good, but Cyclo quickly rejected it. Kareem then asked what their next step would be. Cyclo explained that they would start by helping Mist gain combat experience and levels. He planned for them to hunt weak monsters near Northfolia. Kareem agreed that the plan sounded fine. Mist promised that she would do her best. Kareem added that a light leveling session should end quickly and suggested celebrating the formation of their team afterward. Cyclo stated that he would only go for food and nothing else. Kareem teased that the phrase nothing else might be linked to her goal, but Cyclo denied it. As Cyclo walked behind the 2 girls, he looked at the walls of Northfolia. Not long ago, he had always passed through the gate alone. Now he walked with 2 companions at his side. Mist noticed him slowing down and wondered if something was wrong. Kareem urged him to keep moving, saying that Mist was getting excited. Cyclo smiled without realizing it. For the first time, he felt that he finally had companions he could truly depend on. Just then, someone called Cyclo her big brother. Cyclo broke into a cold sweat as he recognized the voice and slowly turned around. Alice stood there crying as she looked at him. She asked if it was truly him. Inside his mind, Cyclo questioned why this had to happen. She was the last person he ever wanted to see again. Alice tried to run toward her brother, but Cyclo angrily told her not to come any closer. This caused Alice to stop where she stood. Cyclo coldly asked why she was in Northfilia. Alice explained that she had heard he was sent north for a crime he did not commit. However, her stubborn side surfaced, and she claimed she was not that worried at all. Even so, she had still come because she believed she needed to help her helpless brother. Instead, she was told that he had died. She could not believe it, so she stayed in the city and waited for him to appear. She cried endlessly during that time. Seeing him alive filled her with relief and joy. Cyclo could no longer hold back his anger. He angrily apologized for surviving. He apologized for being a worthless and useless brother who failed to die as he was supposed to. The girls around him were left speechless by his words. Alice tried to ask what he meant, but Cyclo accused her of pretending not to know. He blamed her for spreading rumors that called him useless and trash. The guildmaster had once mentioned how Alice said those things many times. Because of that, it became common knowledge among adventurers that the great sage Alice had a useless and trash brother. Cyclo could never forget those words, even after being abused by adventurers and thrown into the deep hole. At that moment in the past, he realized that even his own family had betrayed him. Alice asked in worry what he was talking about, as she had never done such a thing. Cyclo told her not to come any closer. He claimed that just seeing her face made him feel sick. His words shattered Alice and caused her to fall to her knees. She cried and asked why this was happening. She looked like a helpless child crying on the ground as Cyclo turned his back on her. Mist then noticed Cyclo's face filled with pain and Alice was crying like a child. Mist did not understand what had happened, but even so, no matter what choices her master made, she decided she would always stand by his side. In the end, Cyclo and the girls left the city together. After hearing her own brother say that seeing her face made him feel sick, Alice wondered how everything had turned out this way. She had finally traveled so far just to see him again, yet this was how he reacted. 2 months earlier, Alice remembered her brother while holding a pendant in her hand. She had only wanted to see him one more time. That alone would have been enough for her. The pendant had been his birthday gift to her. He had said it was a charm meant to protect someone as reckless as her. Her brother had always been kind to her, and she believed she could do anything for his sake. Because she loved him deeply, she swore to work harder for him than for herself. During her very first monster subjugation, she defeated an A-ranked monster by herself. Many people had failed to defeat that monster for a long time, and she had done it alone. The guild expected such a result from the sage. Alice treated it as nothing important and asked the guild to send half of the reward to her brother as support money. The staff reacted in shock, saying it was a huge amount and that it was earned through her own effort. Alice said it did not matter to her. She explained that her brother was stuck with a useless job skill, and if she did not push herself, he would not be able to survive. The guild staff understood that her brother had a job skill, yet still needed help from his sister. They found it strange and assumed her brother must be weak and unreliable. After that, Alice's reputation continued to grow. She was praised wherever she went for defeating powerful monsters. Each time she downplayed her achievements and calmly explained that she was only working so hard because her brother had a failed skill. Because of her words, others began to assume that her brother was far less capable than she was. As time passed, bad rumors about Cyclo slowly began to spread. Back in the present, Alice still did not understand why she had been hated. She wondered if she had done something wrong to him. She felt that she needed to apologize to fix things. However, she did not even know how to begin. In the end, she knelt on the ground and watched her brother walk away. Cyclo looked back at her once more with concern, then continued walking. Kareem asked what they should do next. Cyclo replied that nothing had changed and that they would train their party coordination nearby as planned. He told them to keep moving. Kareem still looked uneasy, but she agreed. The trio soon reached the nearby plains. Kareem switched into teacher mode as her beginner adventuring class was about to start. She asked the two if they noticed anything about their surroundings. They said it looked like a normal meadow. Kareem confirmed that this was useful information. If the area was just a plain meadow and there were no game trails, then there were likely no large monsters nearby. Still, she warned them not to ignore small animals. She picked up a stone and threw it, knocking out a nearby rabbit. She explained that it could be used as food or as bait to attract monsters. Mist said she understood. Cyclo, noticing something else, assumed Mist had seen it too. Kareem asked what he meant. Cyclo then took out his gun and fired a shot. The bullet flew toward a snake and struck it. Both Kareem and Mist were shocked. Cyclo said the snake had been creeping closer, trying to ambush them. Kareem could not believe how quickly he had started acting proud. She said it was useful, but she banned the use of skills for this training. She told them she would watch from a distance and ordered the two to hunt and take down an animal on their own. She added that if Cyclo failed, he would be stuck with her for extra hot, steamy lessons. Cyclo grew uneasy, sensing that she was serious. As the two left to do their task, Mist asked her master with worry if the person from earlier was truly his younger sister. She wanted to know what had happened before. Cyclo agreed to share because Mist had already sworn to stand on his side. Since she believed him, he felt he could tell her the truth. He explained that it happened shortly before he met Mist. He had been falsely accused, marked as a criminal slave, and sent to North Folia for forced labor. At that time, Alice had already become a well-known adventurer. She went around telling others that he was useless and worthless. Because her words came from a sage, people stopped seeing him as a person. They treated him like trash and eventually threw him into the abyss of the deep hole. Mist felt sad after hearing what happened to him. Cyclo admitted that the adventurers were the ones who harmed him, but even if it was indirect, he believed Alice was the one who pushed him toward that fate. As he fell, he remembered seeing Alice's cold stare. He wanted to ask why she did that to him when they were family. Because of this, he never wanted to see her again if he could avoid it. Mist then asked if he truly never wanted to forgive her or make peace with his sister. Cyclo thought deeply about her words. He believed he knew what he wanted and what he expected from his sister. Yet his mind was filled with one memory. He remembered her crying face as she tried to reach out to him. He apologized to Mist and admitted that he did not even understand what he wanted anymore. Mist reached for his hand and let him know that it was fine to take his time. She suggested that he think carefully and decide later. She asked him not to make choices based only on anger and grief. She reminded him that he was the one who taught her that lesson. She swore to stay by his side no matter what he decided. She then realized how close she was to him and said that was all she wanted to share. She urged him to keep moving since Kareem was waiting. In both his heart and mind, Cyclo wanted to thank her. He truly needed her support. Because of that, he felt the need to confirm something within himself. The trio then moved deeper into the forest. Kareem suggested searching the area one by one and told Mist to go first. Mist promised to do her best. Kareem felt glad to see her full of energy, but she wondered why Cyclo was standing behind her with his gun aimed straight at her back. She asked if he would mind telling her what was really going on. Cyclo said he only wanted to properly ask what she had been planning when she approached them. Kareem said she had already explained that she had fallen for him and wanted to protect someone like Mist. Cyclo admitted that those words were not lies. Still, he remembered that she had another reason for teaming up with them. He told her to speak clearly, since he was ready to pull the trigger at any time. Kareem finally understood why Cyclo had agreed to let her join his party. He wanted to learn her true goal. She asked if he truly could not trust her at all. Cyclo said he did not trust anyone except Mist. Kareem could not believe he was acting as if he had uncovered some great truth, then called it common sense to never trust strangers. She knew that no one was fully trustworthy, yet people still moved forward, weighing risk and reward just to keep living. She told him not to act as if he were the only special case. She thought he had grown up without learning how to doubt others, and all she saw was a spoiled, empty-minded kid sulking. Cyclo told her to shut up. In his mind, he wanted to say she was wrong. Still, he wondered why he could not say it out loud. He had already sworn to take revenge on the entire world. That vow was his resolve. It was all he had, and he only knew how to live the way he always had. Kareem then said that was exactly why she supported him. Cyclo looked confused. She said he was just a foolish kid who had suddenly gained great power, and because of that, there were things only someone like him could do. That was what she believed. Cyclo quietly removed his finger from the trigger. Kareem said she did not care if he killed her one day. However, she wanted him to promise one thing. She asked him to break the world where skills twisted people's will, desires, and lives. She wanted a world where people could chase their dreams honestly. If he could promise that, she would not mind dying by his hand someday. Cyclo was shocked and placed his gun back into storage. He said being forced into such a promise would only bring trouble. Then he walked away. Kareem asked if that was truly how he felt. Cyclo only scratched his head and said nothing more. Mist finally returned with an unfamiliar animal, and Kareem confirmed that she had passed. She then told Cyclo to go next, and he left right away. Mist wished him well as she watched him run off. As Cyclo disappeared, Kareem quietly whispered to herself, both thanking and apologizing to him. Mist heard this and looked confused. Kareem then stated that Cyclo was truly the man she wanted to peg. Mist asked if something had happened while she was gone. At the same time, Cyclo reached a nearby river and washed his face. He realized that Mist had noticed his condition and had been worried about him. He also understood that Kareem had seen through his thoughts and feelings. At that moment, he felt how weak and pitiful he really was. He believed that he only had power because he happened to gain it by chance. Still, he decided to keep believing for a while longer. Soon after, he returned to the girls with a rabbit he had hunted. For now, he chose to trust the wheel of fate and the allies around him. Kareem then told everyone that it was time for the final live practice of the day. She explained that she and Cyclo would keep the monster busy while Mist finished it off. This plan would allow them to test their teamwork and help Mist level up at the same time. The younger members understood the plan clearly. It did not take long for them to find a target, and it was a dangerous one. They discovered a horned bear feeding on a smaller animal. Kareem checked if they were ready, and the other two confirmed it. With a single step, Kareem quickly closed the distance and slashed the monster's back. The beast roared in pain, turned toward them, and began to fight back. While keeping the monster distracted, Kareem told Cyclo that she was counting on him. Cyclo showed his confidence and moved into position behind the monster. He began firing his shots but lowered the power of his weapon on purpose. Kareem also appeared to be holding back. Quietly, Cyclo hoped for Mist's success. Mist finally completed her chant and signaled the others to retreat so she could release her attack. She then cast a magic spell called Heavy Silence. The massive monster froze in shock and took the full force of the spell. The hit was direct and powerful, sending the monster flying into a rock wall. Mist looked completely drained after the attack. Cyclo wondered if it had worked. Moments later, the monster's arm dropped lifelessly. Mist suddenly felt strong emotions rising inside her. Cyclo was overjoyed and hugged her, praising her for leveling up so quickly. Mist felt embarrassed by the hug and tried to pull away. Kareem watched the two and could not believe how gentle and close they were. She then noticed movement in the bushes nearby, but the figure quickly hid. Cyclo reminded everyone that they needed to keep moving forward. Kareem felt relieved to see him acting lively again. She glanced back once more and decided to stay silent about Alice for now. Alice had been secretly following them, still crying quietly with a look full of guilt. The next day, at the entrance of the deep hole, Cyclo reminded the girls about their dungeon run. He planned to let Mist get used to the dungeon by staying in the shallow layers. He also wanted them to practice working together in narrow spaces. This was the same leveling method they used the previous day. The girls agreed with the plan. Kareem pointed out that with Mist joining them, they could push all the way to the first boss if they wanted. However, she stressed that checking their teamwork was more important. She also mentioned that she did not want to get hit from behind by Cyclo again. Cyclo broke into a cold sweat and insisted that he would not make the same mistake. Alice stayed hidden and followed them quietly from behind. The group entered the first floor of the dungeon. Kareem explained that skeleton monsters would appear there. She described them as skeleton-type enemies and warned that the dungeon was filled with cruel and hostile creatures. That was why people called it the worst dungeon. Cyclo remembered the Lord's request to fully conquer the deep hole, shut down its dungeon functions, and protect the people from monster attacks. This marked their first real step toward that goal. Kareem suddenly told everyone to stop. Skeleton monsters began to appear in front of them. Kareem moved first and attacked, then asked Mist to finish them. She weakened most of the skeletons with her attacks. One skeleton tried to sneak up on Kareem, but something struck its arm before it could land a hit. Kareem realized Cyclo had covered her from behind and thanked him. Cyclo claimed he had everything under control and would not mess up. Mist then prepared herself and cast a spell called Holy Burst. A bright light spread across the area. The skeleton monsters fell to the ground one after another. Kareem said the fight was clean and without problems. Cyclo disagreed and said he could still sense enemies nearby. He estimated around 20 more waiting around the corner. Kareem said that number would not be good for Mist's practice. Mist became worried and asked what they should do. Cyclo told them to leave it to him. Kareem asked what he planned to do. Cyclo created a small clock and explained that if they were testing teamwork, he should also show what he could do. Kareem questioned the strange pocket watch. Mist noticed that the hands on the clock were not moving. Cyclo pulled the pin, counted down from 3 and threw the clock toward the hidden skeletons. The clock exploded on impact. Kareem and Mist were left stunned. Cyclo calmly explained that the clock exploded when its timer reached 0. Kareem's hand shook as she angrily told him that move was now forbidden, especially when she was fighting up close. She warned him not to even think about using it again. Cyclo protested and said he worked hard to create it. Kareem pointed out that it was clearly dangerous. Cyclo sulked and called it his masterpiece. Mist laughed and said the power of the attack was still impressive. And so their adventure continued deeper into the dungeon. Mist defeated skeleton monsters one after another without stopping. Kareem praised her efforts and said they could move on to the next layer. Cyclo stayed quiet as he sensed something strange around them. The three of them entered the next layer, and Mist felt amazed when she saw a wide underground lake. She could not believe that a place like this existed inside a dungeon. Kareem explained that this was where the deep hole truly began, since the monsters became more dangerous and the ground became harder to cross. She warned Mist to be careful with every step because one mistake could send her falling into the abyss and lead to death. Mist felt fear rise in her chest, and Cyclo reassured her that he would catch her if anything went wrong. More importantly, he felt the need to tell them something serious. Kareem asked what was troubling him. Cyclo explained that someone had been following them since the first floor. Mist became nervous and wondered if it was a monster. Kareem quickly pointed out that monsters usually stayed in their own areas, so the follower was likely a person. Cyclo agreed and felt that this person was not ordinary, since they always stayed far enough away to avoid being noticed. Kareem could only think of one specific girl. She said that as long as Cyclo was with them, they would be fine. Cyclo told them to leave the matter to him. The trio continued going deeper into the dungeon, passing by the bodies of fallen people along the way. Cyclo noticed that the path looked different from the one he remembered when he climbed out before. Kareem reminded him that dungeons were living places that could change their shape. She then asked what he meant by climbing out. Cyclo explained that something happened in the past, and he was thrown into the abyss, falling straight into the middle layers. Kareem felt shocked and could not believe that he survived such a fall. Cyclo explained that he was lucky, as thick spiderwebs broke his fall like nets and saved his life. As they moved forward, Cyclo quietly used his clock sense and detected a bat monster nearby. Without alerting the others, he disturbed the creature on purpose. He decided that this was the right moment to train Mist on how to deal with sudden ambushes. The bat monster then tried to attack the group. At that moment, Alice's voice rang out and warned her brother to be careful. The bat monster was defeated at once while it was still above their heads. Cyclo looked at his sister when he saw her appear. Alice said it was only a coincidence that they met inside the dungeon. Cyclo did not believe her and felt angry about why she was there. Alice said she was just passing by and felt relieved that she could protect him. Since he had told her to stay away from him, she apologized and stepped back. Cyclo let out a sigh and wondered what she was even trying to do. Alice returned to hiding. Kareem asked if Cyclo was truly fine with his sister following them around like this. Cyclo suggested that they should continue their training instead. As more monsters appeared, Alice kept coming out of her hiding place and killing them to protect Cyclo. Cyclo glared at her each time she showed herself. Alice said it was another random coincidence and tried to leave again. Cyclo told her to wait. Alice thought she was about to be praised and looked hopeful. Instead, Cyclo asked what she thought she was doing. He explained that they were practicing how to deal with ambushes, but Alice was killing everything on her own and ruining the training. Alice began crying and said she only wanted to make up with him. Cyclo told her to stop getting in his way and called her a nuisance. Alice kept crying and apologizing again and again. She said she was truly sorry and returned to hiding once more. Cyclo felt a headache coming on. Mist felt worried about him. After watching the siblings, Kareem realized that the younger sister was taking the situation much harder than expected. There was no way to tell what she might do next. Alice wandered off by herself. When monsters tried to ambush her, she easily burned them into ashes. She finally understood that her older brother truly hated her now. She wondered how she could make him forgive her and how she could see him smile like he used to. She stopped when she reached a cliff and noticed the deep abyss below. She realized she could fall into it as well. By doing that, she thought she might understand her brother better. As she stared down, she hallucinated and saw her brother at the bottom, reaching his hand toward her. He called for her to join him. Alice did not hesitate and ran forward, shouting her love for her brother. She fell from the cliff and promised to do her best. A while earlier, the others took a short break. Mist asked her master with worry if he was all right. Cyclo assured her that he was fine and suggested that they continue their training. Kareem then asked if he truly felt fine leaving his little sister like that. Cyclo grew angry and asked what she meant by it. Kareem explained that she was not trying to interfere or force him to fix things with her. However, she had noticed how cornered Alice looked and there was no way to know what she might do next. Cyclo admitted that he could not allow Alice to cause more trouble. He then suggested that they follow her since she might be planning something. Kareem had not meant it that way at first, but she accepted this idea and agreed to move in that direction. As they traced the path back, they noticed a tall hat lying along the way. Cyclo recognized it as Alice's and immediately ran ahead, leaving the others behind. While running, he remembered a time from their childhood. Alice had been crying without saying a word. Cyclo had told her that he could not understand her feelings if she only cried in silence. Alice had asked why she did not have a father and said that others called her strange because of it. She had also been teased, with people saying that she and Cyclo were not real siblings. Cyclo had reassured her that none of that mattered and that she was still his precious little sister. His calm smile had made Alice smile as well, even though tears continued to fall. Cyclo wondered when he had forgotten those feelings. No matter what happened, Alice was still his family. He then noticed his little sister walking toward the edge of a cliff with an empty look on her face. He called out to her, but she could no longer hear him. She only whispered that she loved him. She then jumped off the edge. Cyclo shouted her name and formed a clock that worked like a grappling hook gun. He fired it as he leaped after her. When the hook caught onto the rock wall, Cyclo swung through the air and grabbed Alice just in time. Alice looked shocked and confused. She clung to her brother and asked why he had saved her. Cyclo warned her not to harm herself and told her to stay quiet. Alice stopped speaking and held on to him even tighter. As the two returned to the edge, Mist and Kareem ran toward them. Mist felt relieved when she saw that both of them were safe. Cyclo assured her that nothing was wrong. Alice stood there without knowing what to say. Cyclo clenched his teeth and grabbed her shoulders with force. He angrily asked why she would do something like jumping off a cliff. He said it was no different from suicide and questioned if she even understood that she could have died. Alice cried out that she did it because she had done something terrible to him. She believed that if she went through the same pain, he might forgive her. Cyclo felt shocked by her words. Alice said that if she could not even do that, then her dear big brother would hate her. Cyclo suddenly pulled her into a tight hug. Alice asked what was wrong, confused by his reaction. Cyclo asked what she truly meant by those words. He said that while he could not forgive her yet, he did not hate her enough to wish her dead. He stated that they were family, and her dying like that would never be acceptable. Alice cried quietly against her brother's shoulder. Cyclo told her to wait for him. He said that was all he needed and that he would handle everything himself. Alice asked if waiting meant he might forgive her someday, and if he would come back for her. Cyclo promised that he would because he wanted that future as well. Alice cried again, this time with relief and happiness. Kareem and Mist did not interfere. Mist had placed a barrier around the siblings so they could speak freely. Kareem believed that crying while letting their guard down was dangerous inside a dungeon. Mist felt glad that her master had finally found his answer. Alice apologized to her brother. Cyclo told her not to do so, thinking they should have talked things through from the beginning. He knew she would never truly try to destroy him. For now, he asked her to wait until he calmed down, believing they could return to normal after that. Alice smiled widely and agreed to wait for him. However, when Cyclo saw her smiling so brightly, his mind returned to the rumors about him. People had called him incompetent and said his sister dragged him around while others treated him like trash. He wondered why Alice could smile like this. A sick feeling rose inside him and he bent over and vomited onto the ground. He questioned what was happening to him and why it felt this way. Alice looked at him with worry, asking what was wrong. Kareem, watching from nearby, sensed that the situation had become even more troublesome. Alice became worried and asked what was wrong. Mist quickly ran to her master's side. Cyclo suddenly felt sick. He wondered why those painful memories had come back without warning. He knew he should not have been afraid of those people anymore. Kareem said it was trauma. She explained that if an adventurer almost died after being attacked by a wolf monster, they could freeze in fear later, even when seeing a normal wolf or an ordinary dog. She believed Cyclo was going through the same thing. Mist asked if there was any way to treat her master. Kareem shook her head and said it was a mental problem. Some people lived with it for the rest of their lives, while others recovered because of something small. It was different for everyone. For now, there was not much they could do. Mist felt sad after hearing that. Cyclo clenched his teeth in frustration. Alice suggested helping her brother get used to it little by staying beside him. Kareem warned that the idea was risky. Trying to help someone get used to their fear could sometimes make the trauma even worse. Alice looked disappointed because she did not want that to happen. Kareem said they had two choices. They could leave everything as it was and risk the condition getting worse over time. or they could accept the risk and try to help him recover. She then asked Cyclo to make the decision. Everyone waited for his answer. Cyclo's expression became firm. He punched himself to gather his resolve. He apologized to everyone, especially his sister. He refused to let something so meaningless control him. He did not want his condition to get worse. Instead, he wanted to overcome it and become stronger. Kareem said she expected that answer. Mist then said she had an idea and asked if she could share it. She reminded everyone that her master had trouble trusting other people. Because of that, he had used a slave contract on her. Cyclo confirmed that trusting no one had been his plan from the beginning. Mist carefully suggested placing Alice under a slave contract as well. The idea shocked Cyclo. Making his own sister his slave felt impossible to accept. Mist quickly apologized after realizing how inappropriate her suggestion sounded. Cyclo gently patted her head and told her not to worry. He thanked her for trying to help even if he could not accept the idea. Alice puffed out her cheeks as she watched her brother show kindness to another girl. A moment later, she suddenly realized there might be a way to make the idea work. She believed she had found the perfect solution. Cyclo asked what she meant. Alice then explained what had happened before she met the group. Before leaving the capital, she had stopped by the capital's Adventurers Guild. She placed 2 bags of gold coins on the table and asked her foster father to handle the usual money transfer. Her foster father, who was actually the guildmaster, Legia Sandria, told her there was no need to send any more money. Confused, Alice asked what he meant. Legias explained that he had expected this to happen. He said her older brother had been sent to Northolia as a criminal slave. Alice was shocked by the news. Legias then claimed that her brother had been identified as the person behind a series of assault cases. Alice immediately rejected the accusation. She knew her older brother would never commit such crimes. The guildmaster reminded her that she had often called her brother incompetent and useless. Alice admitted she had said those things before but insisted they were never true. Legias then walked to a bookshelf and pulled out a large book. He said he had something important to show her and told her to open it. Alice was confused, but she did as he asked. To her surprise, the book was actually a hidden key case. Legias pressed a secret button behind the books. The bookshelf slowly slid aside and revealed a decorated door. He proudly explained that the son of the craftsman's guildmaster had made it as a special order just for her. He encouraged her to unlock it. Instead of using the key, Alice threw it aside and broke the lock with her magic. When she opened the door, she froze. Inside was a huge pile of familiar bags. She quickly realized they were all the bags of gold coins that were supposed to have been sent to her brother. She stood there without saying a word before glaring at Legias in anger. The guildmaster calmly admitted the truth. The money Alice believed she had been sending to her brother had never left the guild. He had secretly stored every bag in the hidden room because he believed it was better to keep the money away from someone he thought was destined to become a criminal. For the past 2 years, Alice had fought alone and gave everything she had. She accepted dangerous but well-paying missions to support her older brother. People admired how the sage defeated A-rank monsters by herself. If she worked with a team, her reward became much smaller. No matter how difficult the mission was, she kept going because she believed it was all for her brother. Then the man standing in front of her ruined everything she had worked so hard for. Alice could not hold back her anger any longer. She released a powerful fire spell called Prominence Nova, causing a huge explosion inside the guildmaster's office. The loud blast shocked the people in the capital. Many feared that the Demon King had launched an attack. They quickly realized the explosion came from the Adventurers Guild instead. When they rushed inside, they found the guildmaster badly injured and immediately called for a healer. Looking at his face, it seemed someone had hit him with incredible force. After that, Alice got on a horse and rode north. She was determined to save her older brother. Back in the present, Alice casually explained everything that had happened in the capital. She believed there was an easy solution. If her older brother arrested her as a criminal slave, then the problem would be solved. Kareem and Mist were left speechless. Cyclo, however, could no longer hide his anger. He called out to Alice in a cold voice. The moment she heard him, her whole body stiffened because she knew her older brother was truly upset. Cyclo shouted at the top of his lungs and called her an absolute idiot. He said that blowing up the guildmaster's office was a serious crime. He could not understand why she acted as if it was no big deal. Alice defended herself by saying she had worked so hard for him, only for that man to ruin everything. Cyclo replied that causing an explosion was far too much. He said she should have stopped after punching the guildmaster once. Kareem quickly reminded him that punching someone was still assault. Cyclo let out a sigh. He decided that Alice could not be allowed to wander around freely anymore. He would personally take custody of her. After hearing that, Kareem remembered that Cyclo had connections with the Margrave. Alice smiled proudly after hearing that her older brother had someone important to rely on. Kareem suggested leaving all the paperwork to the Margrave. Cyclo agreed and said the nobleman could handle that part. Mist stayed silent. She never expected the situation to grow into something this serious. Later, at the Margrave's manor, the Margrave suddenly felt a headache coming on. He could not believe that the person behind the bombing at the Capital's Guild was actually Alice. To make things even more shocking, she was Cyclo's real younger sister. Now, Cyclo wanted to take her into custody as a criminal slave. Cyclo confirmed that was his plan and asked if the Margrave could handle the process. The Margrave asked what a lord was supposed to think when an SSS-ranked adventurer asked for a favor like this. Cyclo admitted that he had no idea. The Margrave said he always had to think about the possible costs. His mind constantly filled with the worst possible situations, and he never ran out of things to worry about. Oddly enough, he said that was what made every day interesting. Cyclo was happy with the answer and believed the Margrave would take care of everything. Sitting beside Cyclo, Cruz watched him with clear admiration. The Margrave let out a sigh and said they were far from the capital and did not have strong ties to it. Some people might look down on them, but he did not care. Cyclo thanked him for agreeing to help. Later that night, Mist visited her master's room and asked if she could speak with him. Cyclo welcomed her inside. After they sat down, he asked what was troubling her. Mist admitted that she had something important to confess. She revealed that she had always known a way to cure his condition. Cyclo was surprised, but he quickly realized she was talking about regeneration magic. Mist confirmed that he was right. She explained that if she had used the magic before his heart fully healed, everything that had happened since they left the capital might have disappeared. That included all the memories he had made with her. Cyclo stayed quiet as he listened. Mist admitted that she had kept the truth hidden because of her own selfish feelings. She did not want her master to forget her. Overcome with guilt, she lowered her head and cried. She apologized for staying silent for so long. Cyclo gently touched her cheek and smiled. He thanked her for telling him the truth and said she had nothing to apologize for, because they had already made a promise to each other. He promised that he would never forget her because every memory they had shared since meeting was precious to him. He leaned closer until their foreheads touched and asked her to use regeneration magic on him. Mist slowly calmed down. She realized he was not giving her an order. He was sincerely asking for her help. Wanting to repay the trust and kindness he had shown her, Mist accepted his request. She then used regeneration magic on Cyclo. The next morning, Alice went to see her older brother with a smile. Together with Mist and Kareem, she looked at him with concern and asked how she looked. Cyclo stayed silent, keeping his head down as he looked at the floor. Kareem became worried when Cyclo did not answer. Mist also looked worried, even though she trusted her restoration magic. Thankfully, Cyclo smiled as soon as he saw his little sister. He said she had finally returned to the person he remembered. Alice felt happy and hugged her older brother. Cyclo hugged her back and welcomed her into his life again. Kareem called the siblings troublesome, while Mist felt relieved that everything ended well. She was especially happy that her restoration magic had worked. Cyclo also thanked Mist for having the courage to use such powerful magic on him. For a brief moment, he felt as if their souls had connected. The feeling made him want to hold her in his arms, but he quickly pushed the thought away and reminded himself to stay focused. After calming himself, Cyclo told Alice it was time to complete the slave contract. Just then, the usual slave trader entered the room. Alice admitted that she was not happy about becoming a slave, but she accepted it because it was for her older brother. Cyclo quickly explained that the contract was only meant to place her under his protection. The slave trader greeted Cyclo, and Cyclo confirmed that he wanted Alice placed under his care. The slave contract ritual then began. Cyclo placed his hands on the contract and it gave off a bright light. Cruz watched with amazement because it was the first time he had seen a slave contract. The slave trader was also impressed by Cyclo's large amount of mana. Moments later, a slave mark appeared on the back of Alice's neck. She gently touched the mark and quietly accepted that she had finally become her older brother's slave. Cyclo then said he had 2 orders for Alice. Alice swallowed nervously as her older brother gave the first one. He told her to learn some common sense. Alice did not expect that and became upset. She questioned what he meant because she believed she already had common sense. Cyclo explained that people with common sense did not destroy buildings just because they could. Alice could not think of anything to say and only pouted. Cyclo then gave his second order. He told Alice to be more honest. He said it would be both his first and last order for her. Alice's face turned red and she could not find the words to answer him. Kareem thanked both of them for their hard work. Cyclo apologized for making Kareem and Mist wait. Mist said she was happy to see Alice and her brother make up. Alice agreed and said it was only a matter of time before they did. She then admitted that she loved her older brother so much that being treated like his property even felt like a good thing. Everyone immediately fell silent. Alice froze after realizing what she had just admitted. Her face became even redder and she had no idea what to say. She quickly realized that Cyclo's order to be more honest had forced her to speak her true feelings. She found the situation extremely embarrassing. Cruz wondered if the slave contract had some kind of brainwashing effect. The slave trader dismissed the idea and said Alice was only imagining it. Cyclo told his sister to calm down. He reminded her that she already knew he cared about her as well. Alice curled up on the floor and covered her bright red face. She said that was not what embarrassed her. She then admitted that when she said she liked her older brother, she meant that she wanted to marry him. Cyclo was left completely stunned. Mist looked even more shocked, while Kareem quietly found the entire scene interesting. Oh, Sweet Home Alabama. Alice reminded Cyclo that when they were children, he had once told her he would marry her someday. Cyclo quickly reminded her that they were real siblings, so marriage between them was impossible. He also questioned whether he had ever actually said that. Alice asked if the noble law would allow them to marry. Cruz explained that the law only applied to nobles. If Cyclo became a noble by earning great achievements, then marriage between the two of them would be allowed under that law. Alice realized that was the answer. If they conquered the deep hole, Cyclo would become a noble, and she wanted to help him reach that goal. Cyclo replied that it was much harder than she made it sound. He guessed that was one of the reasons she had herself adopted. Alice tried to deny it at first, but she soon admitted that it was half the reason. Cyclo could not believe what he was hearing from his own sister. He even started feeling sorry for the guildmaster in the capital. Alice told him there was no reason to feel sorry for someone she considered a creep. Cyclo said this was exactly why he had ordered her to learn some common sense. At that moment, Alice suddenly felt a sharp sting from her slave mark and asked what had happened. Cyclo explained that the pain came because she had gone against his first order. Instead of complaining, Alice enjoyed the feeling. She reacted with excitement because it made her feel like her older brother was training her. Kareem joked that Cyclo was bold enough to charm even his own younger sister. She then noticed Mist standing completely still without saying a word and asked if something was wrong. Mist quickly came back to her senses and wrapped herself around Cyclo's arm. She refused to let Alice get so close to her master. Alice immediately held on to Cyclo's other arm, refusing to back down. Cruz praised Cyclo as a hero surrounded by beautiful girls. Cyclo simply asked someone to help him. The slave trader remembered the first time Cyclo came looking for a slave. Back then, Cyclo had looked tense and suspicious while asking for someone who was completely bound by slave magic. Now, he looked much calmer than before. The slave trader believed the girls around Cyclo were the reason for that change. Meanwhile, in the capital, Bujin walked through the streets like a famous police officer. Many people admired him because they believed he was a kind and humble noble. They greeted him warmly, and he answered with a smile. As soon as they looked away, his smile disappeared, and his face filled with disgust. In his mind, he complained that there were no decent women left for him to target. He believed he had already ruined the lives of every good woman in the town. Hunting innocent women had become his only source of entertainment. That was the real reason he worked as a police officer. Even though he came from a noble family, wearing the uniform made the townspeople trust him without question. His noble status made them trust him even more. What he enjoyed most was watching a woman's trusting expression turn into complete despair. Being thrown out of his family's home had become the best thing that had ever happened to him. It gave him the freedom to continue destroying innocent lives without anyone stopping him. He briefly thought about the apothecary shop owner. She had been one of his finest targets, but he had grown bored with her and had left the rest to the bandits. He no longer even cared enough to remember her name. Without warning, several knights stopped him during his patrol. They showed him a warrant for his arrest on charges of treason. The sight left him completely shocked. Meanwhile, an elderly woman named Lady Olivia stood before a grandfather clock as one of her servants delivered a report. The servant confirmed that everything had been prepared. Olivia was pleased to hear it. The time had finally come for everyone to face judgment for the crimes they had hidden under the name of Cyclo Owen. Meanwhile, Bujin asked the royal knights why they were accusing him of treason. He thought about all the women he had taken advantage of, but they had all been commoners. He could not understand how that could lead to such a serious crime. He tried asking the knights for an explanation, but they answered by beating him before dragging him away. The nearby citizens gathered to watch, confused by what they saw. They could not believe that someone like Bujin was being treated like a criminal. The knights paused, unsure of what to do next, and looked to their captain for orders. She removed her helmet, revealing that the person beneath the heavy armor was a beautiful woman. The crowd gasped in surprise. The captain announced that this was not a wrongful arrest. She declared that Bujin was being arrested for a series of assaults and disappearances. The citizens struggled to believe her. They remembered hearing that the criminal had been someone named Owen. Bujin wondered where his plan had gone wrong. He had made sure to place all the blame on Cyclo. Now he needed to find a way out. He quickly claimed that the knights had made a mistake. He insisted that the serial attacker had already paid for his crimes and was no longer alive. The captain asked how he knew that. Bujin claimed that a noble had told him. She asked for the noble's name. Without thinking, Bujin answered that it was Raven Crowheart II. He proudly added that Raven was the hero from the famous ducal house. He believed that no one would dare question someone with such a powerful job skill title. The captain glared at him. Suddenly, the chains around Bujin's wrists tightened. He screamed as the metal dug into his arms. The captain could not believe he had dared to drag the hero's name through the mud with his lies. Bujin cried that his arms were being crushed. He glared at the captain and cursed at her. He angrily threatened to turn her into a rag as well. The crowd fell silent in shock. At that moment, the citizens finally realized that Bujin had been the real criminal all along. They also saw what kind of person he truly was. Bujin immediately realized he had made a terrible mistake. The angry crowd rushed toward him, deciding to deal with him themselves. They surrounded him and beat him without holding back. The knights asked their captain if they should stop the citizens. She calmly replied that they would simply report that Bujin had resisted arrest and had been subdued. After the crowd finished beating him, the knights picked up his battered body. The captain looked down at him and mockingly asked if he still wanted to fight. Bujin could only whine helplessly like a child. The captain promised that the interrogation would be far more painful. She revealed that her own sister had been one of his victims. She swore that she would make him confess every crime he had committed, even if she had to turn him into a rag, just as he had done to his victims. Meanwhile, at the royal palace, the servants were happy to see the hero and the saint arriving together. As they walked through the halls, Raven complained about being called to the palace without warning. He thought the king's sudden requests were a huge bother. Maria quietly followed behind him and simply agreed with what he said. Raven found her response dull. Ever since that day, Maria had become completely obedient to him, almost like a puppet. At first he enjoyed it, but now he was starting to lose interest. When they reached the throne room, Raven announced their arrival outside the large doors. The guards did not even greet him, which annoyed him. He silently thought they were being rude. Inside the throne room, the king sat on his throne and explained that he had called the hero and the saint for only one reason. Raven bowed his head and respectfully asked what it was. The king answered that it was about his grandmother. Raven felt confused. The king usually told them they could raise their heads, but this time he did not. The king explained that his grandmother had come from a distant land to marry into the royal family. As a wedding gift, she received a beautiful mechanical clock. It was built with such special craftsmanship that only one person could repair or maintain it. That person was the clockmaker. The moment the king mentioned the clockmaker, Cyclo's face appeared in Maria's mind. The king continued by saying that the clockmaker had later been expelled from the Craftsmen's Guild. Not long after that, he was captured in Northolia as a serial killer. Raven's face turned pale as he realized where the conversation was heading. Maria also broke into a cold sweat. The king revealed that the clockmaker's name was Cyclo Owen. He then asked Raven if the name sounded familiar. Raven flinched and tried to explain as he slowly lifted his head. Before he could speak, the king coldly asked who had given him permission to look up. Raven quickly lowered his head again. The king then said that the kingdom could not risk damaging its relationship with the Church of Skill Selection. Raven agreed because the kingdom was still fighting the neighboring Lustgald Empire in its war against the demons. The king said that this was exactly why they could not ignore people with special skills, even if they treated ordinary citizens cruelly. Raven froze in shock. The king had already discovered the secret games he had been playing with the common people. This time, however, things were different. The king coldly accused Raven of indirectly raising a weapon against the royal family. He explained that the young man Raven had killed was a craftsman the Queen Dowager had depended on. Raven quickly asked the king to wait. Wearing a fake innocent expression, he insisted that a hero like him would never do such a thing. At that moment, he realized how serious the situation had become. He wondered where he had made a mistake. He believed Maria had reported everything he had done. The king decided to show Raven what would have happened if he had not been the hero. Bujin was dragged into the room, badly beaten and barely able to stand. The king asked Raven if he truly did not recognize the man. Raven realized the king had planned to blame his crimes on Bujin and have him executed instead. He believed his hero skill had saved him from that fate. Because of that, he firmly denied knowing Bujin at all. The king then announced Raven's punishment. He declared that he would issue a royal order that suited a hero and would do so in front of everyone. Raven was confused. Even after everything, he was still going to be punished. The king ordered Raven to earn glory by fighting on the front lines of the war against the Lustgald Empire. At first, Raven believed the order would be easy for someone like him. Then he remembered that the front lines of the demon war were so dangerous that even S-rank adventurers often died there. Even so, he convinced himself he could survive. He planned to use the soldiers from his ducal house as shields while they fought in his place. After they weakened the enemies, he would take the final blows and claim the credit. He also believed that if Maria came with him, he would be safe. To him, his own life mattered more than anything else. The king was not even finished. He ordered Raven to leave without taking any private soldiers or the saint. Raven would go to the front lines completely alone. Otherwise, the punishment would have no meaning. The order shocked Raven. He panicked, fell to his knees, and begged for forgiveness. He promised that his ducal house would protect the clockmaker with everything they had if the king would spare him. Maria remained silent. The king replied that such a promise was no longer needed. He explained that, unlike Raven, Cyclo had already accomplished something even greater. Raven could not believe that someone with what he considered a worthless skill had achieved such an incredible feat. Maria still said nothing. The king then ordered the knights to take Raven away because he had nothing more to say to him. Raven cried like a spoiled child and begged them to wait. He shouted that he did not want to die. He pleaded with the king for mercy, but the king remained silent as he sat on his throne. After Raven was taken away, the king said it was time for the saint to face her own punishment. Maria accepted his decision without arguing. The king ordered her to serve at a monastery in the distant Dragon's Hidden Land. She would not be allowed to return to the capital until she finished her duty. The knights were shocked because the place was known to be very dangerous. They were even more surprised when they saw Maria smiling. Ever since the day she betrayed Cyclo, Maria had wanted someone to punish her for what she had done. She believed Raven's punishment was not enough. To her, the king's order was the perfect way to make up for her sins. She lifted her head with a relieved smile and accepted the punishment. The king's grandmother, Lady Olivia, soon received a report about everything that had happened. She thanked her maid for bringing the news. She knew Cyclo would finally return. The maid then carefully asked why Lady Olivia cared so much about Cyclo. Olivia explained that Cyclo was as precious to her as her homeland because he was the only person who could repair her mechanical clock. However, that was not the only reason. She believed he was someone who would accomplish great things. The maid thought Cyclo was lucky to have earned the favor of the Grand Empress Dowager. At that moment, another servant rushed into the room with urgent news. He announced that they had finally discovered Cyclo's location. Cyclo had returned from a depth of the deep hole that no one had ever reached before. Because of that achievement, he had been recognized as the legendary Triple S-ranked adventurer. He had also formed a party called Wheel of Fate and was already heading back to the deep hole to conquer it. The maid asked if the report was really true. The servant confidently answered that there was no doubt. Lady Olivia let out a soft laugh. It seemed Cyclo had already begun accomplishing great things. She decided she would do everything she could to help Cyclo and his companions return safely to the capital. Until they met again, she hoped he would find trustworthy companions. In her heart, she quietly wished him success. Northfolia was the northernmost city in the Heinberg Kingdom. The village farther to the north was a frontier settlement where the first settlers had built their homes. Whenever monsters appeared near the village, adventurers from Northfolia were sent to deal with them. That became the next job for Cyclo and the girls. Mist felt excited because it was the first mission for their party. Alice, looking a little unhappy, claimed she could have handled the job by herself. Cyclo gave her a sharp look. Alice quickly admitted she was happy to be part of the team. Cyclo realized the order that made her be more honest was still affecting her. He remembered that Alice had always worked alone and asked if that had been difficult. Alice said it had been fine, but after reaching S rank, many nobles and members of the royal family started hiring her. Her job skill Sage allowed her to use all 6 elements of magic. Most of her spells focused on attacking, but she could also combine elements to create barriers, cast healing spells, and perform many other types of magic. She admitted she was not as skilled at healing as Mist, so she usually depended on potions. She showed the group several bottles. Cyclo was surprised because they were top-grade potions. Alice explained that a sage could also use alchemy. However, it was rare to find a sage who could master all of those abilities. Feeling proud, she confidently told everyone to leave all item crafting to her. Mist looked at Alice's large chest before glancing down at her own flat chest. Kareem asked what was wrong. Mist then noticed that Kareem also had a large chest. She stayed frozen, feeling disappointed in herself. Later, the group arrived at the frontier village and entered through the gates without any trouble. Kareem suggested meeting the client first so they could gather information. Alice also wanted to go shopping because herbs and other materials were cheaper there than in Northfolia. The two quickly divided the tasks between themselves. Cyclo was speechless. He had not expected the two of them to be so dependable. Mist assured her master that everything would be fine and encouraged everyone to do their best. She decided to go with Alice. If they found any damaged items, they could buy them and use her restoration magic to repair them. Cyclo said that was a smart idea. He then decided to go with Kareem to meet the village chief. As Mist walked with Alice, she realized it was the first time they had been alone together. She looked at Alice with some hesitation and noticed that Alice acted a lot like her master. Alice suddenly called out to Mist, which caught her by surprise. Mist quickly thanked Alice for healing her older brother's heart. She became embarrassed and said it had been the only thing she could do. After a moment, she carefully asked if Alice had any concerns about her job skill. Alice confidently asked if Mist knew who she was talking to. She reminded Mist that she was an archsage and told her not to underestimate her. Alice explained that she could read a person's mana flow better than almost anyone. From what she had seen, Mist's skill looked perfectly fine. She also said that her older brother trusted Mist, and that was enough for her to trust Mist as well. Mist felt deeply moved and tears filled her eyes. Alice told her not to cry because it would make her seem like the bad person. She then told Mist it was time to go. Mist happily followed behind her. Meanwhile, the village chief welcomed Cyclo and Karim and thanked them for coming. Karim explained that they had arrived to confirm the details of the request. They had heard that the hellhounds in the nearby forest had been acting strangely. The chief confirmed the report. He explained that the hellhounds had started gathering in packs and hunting closer to the village. The villagers had become frightened because they feared the monsters would eventually enter the village. Cyclo understood the situation. He suggested exploring the forest first to find the cause of the problem. Karim agreed with the plan. She told the chief that they would stay in the village for a few days. The chief offered them an empty house on the edge of the village and asked them to use it. Karim thanked him and Cyclo smiled as he looked at her. After leaving the chief's house, Cyclo and Karim walked together in silence. When they reached a bridge over a quiet river, Karim looked around. The peaceful place reminded her of the day Cyclo had pointed his gun at her. Just like before, they were alone. Seeing how calm he was now, she believed he trusted her more than he had before. Cyclo suddenly called out to Karim. He walked over to her and thanked her for everything she had done. Karim was caught off guard. Cyclo explained that he could not say those words before, so he wanted to say them now. He thanked her for believing in someone as immature as he had been, and for always supporting him. Karim became flustered after hearing his words. She asked what had gotten into him and wondered why he was saying all of that. She insisted it was not a big deal. Cyclo looked surprised before letting out a laugh. He never expected to see Karim become so embarrassed. Her face turned even redder as she acted shy. She started wondering what Cyclo really thought of her. Cyclo said he saw her as a true adult. He respected her and wanted to learn from her. Then he seriously asked Karim to stand by his side. He wanted her to help him keep moving forward. If he ever started down the wrong path, he wanted her to be the one to stop him. He reached out for a handshake because he wanted her to become that kind of trusted companion. Karim was stunned. Only a short time earlier, Cyclo had treated her with nothing more than cautious trust because of their business relationship. Now his words made her happy. She agreed that she would help guide him and keep him on the right path. Even so, she let out a sigh. Cyclo asked what was wrong. Karim admitted that she had gotten her hopes up for nothing. She joked that she had been sure he was about to ask her to have his baby. As she teased him, she showed part of her chest. This time, Cyclo became the one who felt embarrassed. He reminded her that he had been completely serious just moments earlier. He quickly took back what he had said about her being a respectable adult. Karim laughed and admitted it was her way of getting back at him for making her feel embarrassed first. At that moment, they heard a man shouting that he had nothing to sell them. Then Alice's angry voice demanded to know what was going on. Cyclo and Karim heard the commotion and wondered if something was wrong. Cyclo could not believe that his sister had already found trouble. The two quickly ran toward the voices. As they passed an old, worn-down house, someone inside dropped a stack of plates after seeing Cyclo run by. A woman looked out through the window in disbelief and wondered if the young man she had just seen was really the Cyclo she knew. The merchant insisted that he would not sell anything to them. Alice angrily asked what kind of joke he was making. She could not believe that a tool shop refused to sell items to adventurers. Mist asked her to calm down, but Alice refused to back away. At that moment, Cyclo and Karim finally arrived. Cyclo asked what had happened. Alice explained that the merchant refused to sell them anything. She said he had judged Mist because he did not understand her skill, and she could not accept how unfair it was. Cyclo looked at the merchant and asked what Alice meant. The merchant immediately became nervous. He explained that he did not want to go against an SSS-ranked adventurer like Cyclo. Cyclo was surprised that the merchant already knew who he was. The merchant explained that he was an adventurer from Northfolia. He had seen Cyclo defeat Fiancée, so he also knew about Mist's skill. Mist stayed quiet as the merchant continued. He said he did not want to judge anyone because of their job skill. However, if the church placed him on its blacklist and stopped the skill selection ceremony in the village, no one there would be able to fight monsters. He lowered his head and asked Cyclo to understand his situation. Cyclo could not blame the merchant. The church treated anyone with a heretic skill as less than human. Selling items to Mist would mean going against the church. Because of that, Cyclo decided not to force the issue. Alice was shocked by his decision. Cyclo told everyone it was time to leave. Alice asked him to wait, but the merchant only kept his head lowered as he shook with fear and apologized again. The group returned to their lodging. Alice said the whole situation was completely unfair. Cyclo agreed, but he explained that taking their anger out on the merchant would not solve anything. Just like Mist, the merchant was also a victim of the church. Karim sighed and agreed. She explained that a small village like this could not stand against the church. She added that this was the price of making the Church of Skill Selection the nation's official religion to gain greater power. Alice admitted that she understood, but she still felt upset. Cyclo apologized to Mist. He said he had wanted her to enjoy shopping without any trouble. Mist quickly shook her head. She said her master had done nothing wrong, so there was no reason for him to apologize. Instead, she was happy that he trusted her enough to let her experience things like this. She said that trust meant a lot to her. Cyclo smiled after hearing that and gently patted her head. Alice immediately became jealous and complained that it was unfair. She asked her big brother to praise her too. Cyclo thanked her for standing up for Mist and patted her head as well. Kareem stepped closer and asked for head pats too. Cyclo reminded her that he had already taken away her title as a respectable adult. Alice looked confused and asked what they were talking about. Mist also demanded an explanation. Cyclo simply replied that it was something only he and Kareem understood. Just then, the village chief came over and apologized. He had heard about what happened at the shop. Cyclo told him not to worry about it. The chief thanked him for understanding. The chief explained that people in the frontier could not survive without the church's help. The skill selection ceremony had originally existed so the skill selection god could give people skills to support their lives. However, it had become a way for the church to control everyone's future instead. The chief wondered if the church was really helping anyone anymore. A familiar woman's voice suddenly called out to Cyclo. He froze and slowly turned around. A barefoot woman wearing a slave collar looked at him with disbelief as she asked if he was really Cyclo. It was Miranda, the same woman who had welcomed him home after work every day in the past. The group was invited to the house where Miranda was staying. The room was a mess. Empty alcohol bottles, dirty rags, disinfectants, and ropes tied to a bed were scattered around. Kareem took one look at the room and understood what it had been used for. Cyclo asked Miranda why she had ended up in the frontier village. The village chief tried to explain, but Miranda stopped him. She said she would tell the story herself. After Cyclo had been sent to Northfolia, Officer Bujin had tricked her, taken her away, and repeatedly abused her. When Cyclo heard Bujin's name, his face darkened as he remembered the cruel officer. Miranda said that after a long time, everything had changed. The pain and suffering slowly became something she could barely feel. Before she realized it, she had been sold to the village as a sex slave. Alice broke into tears after hearing Miranda's story and called her fate tragic. The village chief lowered his head with guilt, while Kareem remained silent. Cyclo quietly cursed under his breath. Even so, he forced himself to stay calm. The last time he let his emotions control him, he made a terrible mistake. This time, he focused on what he could do to help Miranda. Miranda gently touched Cyclo's hand and asked him for a favor. She wanted him to punish her himself. Her request shocked him. He asked what she was talking about and refused right away. Miranda insisted that he should never forgive her for what she had done. She promised to accept any punishment. She even asked him to buy her and punish her. Cyclo realized she was no longer thinking clearly. Even so, Miranda continued begging. Cyclo then asked Alice for help. Alice understood what he meant and apologized to Miranda. She cast a magic spell that made the older woman fall asleep. Cyclo caught Miranda before she fell and carefully laid her on the bed. He wanted her to rest until morning. After Mist healed Miranda's wounds, the group went outside with the village chief. Cyclo thanked Alice and Mist for helping. Curious, Mist asked who Miranda was. Cyclo explained that Miranda was someone they had known back in the capital. She had cared for him and Alice when they were children, almost like a parent. Cyclo then turned to the village chief. The older man flinched in fear. Cyclo said he wanted to return the reward for the request and asked the chief to release Miranda to them. The village chief begged for mercy. He explained that Miranda was the reason the village guards remained in the village. If she left, there would not be enough young men to protect everyone. Cyclo tried to argue, but Kareem decided to step in. She said it would not become a problem. She pointed out that the reward money was enough to buy 10 female slaves. She explained that a shop in Northfolia sold former adventurers who had become slaves. Since Cyclo knew the slave trader, he offered to introduce the village chief to them. The village chief asked what she meant. Kareem explained that many female adventurers fell into debt while trying to repay loans. If the village treated them well, some of them might choose to stay even after paying off their debts. Since they had once been adventurers, they could still help defend the village. The village chief realized the idea could benefit the village in the long run. He said he would discuss it with the other villagers before making a decision. After that, he left. Cyclo thanked Kareem for helping. She told him it was nothing to worry about. Cyclo apologized for making the decision on his own and for involving everyone. He asked if they would continue to support him. The girls agreed without any hesitation. They trusted him because he was their leader. Cyclo thanked them. This time, he promised that he would be the one to save Miranda. That night, Miranda cried quietly in her sleep.